And really what the trusted build is an excuse to wipe election records. It's a perfect excuse to cover the tracks. Her entire city council flipped. All the incumbents lost.
This is why she asked for outside help.
How significant system log files are to the prosecution of crimes involving computers.
He's asking if there are other images that would reveal the extent, and there are at least 5 that I'm aware of.
Right, it's like not allowing people into the murder scene, the crime scene, to actually investigate it and saying, well, there's no evidence. Well, yeah, you won't let us in the damn room.
Everybody is EMS admin. They're sharing credentials.
And notice you've got these logins of EMS admin on here. But look at this one up here that pops up. DVS administrator. That is another user on this system that the election staff does not have access to. They don't even know about this account.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember, support the people that support this show. All the links to my partners, sponsors, and affiliates down in the description below, including the links to the guests that I'm going to have with me today. We will be covering part 3 of the Tina Peters saga. Parts 1 and 2 will be linked down in the description, as well as on my co-hosts' channels. So let me bring them up on the screen. Brian, Ash, Mark, again, thank you guys for joining us. I think we all recognize how important of a matter this is, not just to our country, but for a woman that's literally, in bad medical shape right now and suffering. So, Ash, you want to kind of brief us on what the conversation tonight's going to look like?
Sure. So in part 1, we talked about who Tina Peters was, what she was accused of, what the facts of that went through some of the key moments from trial. In the second part, we talked about all of the things, well, most of the things that were not allowed to be discussed at her trial, things that the jury was gatekept from ever seeing or hearing. We're going to continue a little bit with that tonight and talk about the 3rd and 4th Mesa reports with Mark. And then we'll get into her sentencing and kind of where things are with her appeal. Multiple appeals in process. So that's kind of what the plan that we have. I also saw on Tina's social media accounts, and I'm not sure who's posting those, but on Tina's social media accounts today, it says she's been put in solitary confinement after lodging a report against a teacher that was acting inappropriately with her. And she made a report, and it on the social post, it says that she has been moved into solitary confinement while there is an investigation. So prayers for Tina. If you want to support Tina, it's tinapeters.us. That's the only place to go.
Yes. A mutual friend of ours did reach out and provide that information, and they are under the impression that it's retaliation for all the people that have been calling in and making the reports to check on her welfare. And I agree with you. It definitely sounds like it. So the Mesa reports, what exactly is this for people that are hearing this term for the first time?
Well, the Mesa reports are the reports that were generated by various experts based on the images that were taken in Mesa County. So we've spoken in both of the other parts about the trusted build, which is kind of the central event in this saga. The trusted build is where the vendors and the Secretary of State approve a new golden image for the machines in the run-up to the next election. And it is asserted that it wipes the logs and all of the records on the machines. Now, the Secretary of State's office and all of their experts will say, no, we've retained everything that we're required to retain by law. I think that the experts that produce the reports and other experts like Colonel Sean Smith, who we had on part 2, and Clay Parikh, who Brian and I have had on Why We Vote several times, would say that that is a misinterpretation of the law and that things like system operating logs absolutely do need to be retained. But the trusted build is wiping election records, and whether or not they're retained is a different matter. That's the central event of this saga. Tina Peters employed Conan Hayes to take images before the trusted build and after the trusted build. We have those 2 images to compare to each other, and the Mesa reports are the reports that have been done comparing those 2 images. Mark, is that fair?
I would say that's fair. Yeah. Reports 1 and 2 are my work and Doug Gould's. Doug Gould's name is on it. My name's not on it, but I did do all the work. The reason my name's not on it is I didn't have a bunch of fancy credentials like Doug's got. So I don't mind doing the work. I wasn't out there to take credit or anything like that. I just wanted to roll my sleeves up and help. with everything. And Doug has really good fancy credentials that look very very big in on the stand. So I figured, okay, fine, put your name on it, no big deal. But I can answer any question on reports 1 and 2, obviously, because Doug and I both co-wrote those reports, and we both duplicated each other's work. So I did all the work, and then he went and did all the work as well, and then we worked together to put the reports out. And then Jeff O'Donnell and Walter Doherty did report 3, and then report 4 I know was Jeff O'Donnell. I don't know if he did it with other people. I've got it up on my screen here. I'll have to look into that and see, but I know Jeff's got it here on mesamadness.com. If anyone wants to find the reports, all 4 of them are on there.
And that's a really good point, Mark, is the credentials of, Doug Gould, your 40 plus years of experience, Jeff O'Donnell's decades of experience, Walter Doherty and his, Professor Emeritus, I can never say that word, Emeritus at Texas A&M, his Harvard, education. And when you compare that with the people that Mesa rolled out to rebuttal the report, and you see, attorneys and election advocates and nobody with any substantive expertise.
Well,
That's correct. A whole bunch of stuff that's all built on blind trust and blind knowledge, because most of the people that are discussing what happened in Mesa County forensically don't have the technical abilities, knowledge, or expertise to even be able to discuss those. So all they do is regurgitate talking points they're given by other people that most cases are really coming from the vendor, which unfortunately we've found we can't trust the vendors.
And this goes all the way to the top, right? I mean, safest and most secure election came from Christopher Krebs, and Chris Krebs is a lawyer with his undergrad in environmental science, who then became the nation's top cyber expert somehow.
Well, yeah, I'd love to discuss some cyber stuff with Chris sometime.
I would love to have that on video as well. Let me do this before we dive deep into this. For those people that haven't seen part 1 or part 2, or definitely don't have the vast knowledge that the 3 of you have into all of this, why is it that the conversation we're going to have today with the Mesa reports, obviously, and with the sentencing, that kind of self-explanatory, but with the Mesa reports, why is this important to the Tina Peters story? Yeah, I did a little Marine dyslexia. Right? Forget.
I think the truth matters. And as we started part 1 with, there are a lot of different narratives about what happened with Tina Peters, what happened at her trial, what happened in her sentencing, why she is in prison for 9 years unless something happens. There's a lot of stories told about that. I think that what we see certainly here in Colorado at the local level is a lot of confirmation bias. People either think that Tina Peters is a 100% hero that did nothing wrong, that is being persecuted, or they think she is the world's greatest villain. And the reality is that, this was a situation where there was cause, as we discussed in part 2, there was cause to question the elections. She was being very brave and, following the advice of people that she trusted and trying to make sure that she took the records that she took. There was a misrepresentation made during that process, which is what led to the specific charges that which we talked about in part 1, right? It's not election tampering. It's not stealing and leaking passwords. All of these things that were told about Tina Peters are detached from the facts on the ground. And I think that matters. I think it matters to discuss to lay out the truth of the matter. If you're in a court of law, the finder of fact, whether that's a bench trial with a judge or a jury trial with a jury, the finder of fact is attempting to find the truth of the matter. I think that's a good orientation to have. And we all want Tina to get out. I think when the facts are laid bare and we look at what actually happened in the taking of the images, in the prosecution as it unfolded, the investigation into the prosecution, into the trial, and what happened in her sentencing and what is happening to her now, I think when all of that is laid bare, it becomes very, very clear that she is being unjust. It's cruel and unusual shit that's happening. And, when that's laid out, then that should reign, and the truth matters. And Tina Peters should not be in jail in prison for 9 years for lying to Jenna Griswold's team. That's just stupid.
Yep. If people look at the truth, she's vindicated. If they just look at the truth and fairly adjudicate it, Tina did absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, she saved all of our butts, and not only us that love Tina, but she saved the butts of a lot of the people that hate her right now because they have believed the media narrative lie that's been jammed down their throats for years to get them to think that she's, worse than the orange Cheeto. Literally, it's the same scam, the same influence operation to discredit her and with lies, lies upon lies upon lies. And these poor citizens who absolutely think she's the most evil person in the world don't realize what a true amazing hero she actually is, standing up to protect the rights of those that even hate her.
Wow. Well, there you have it. Well, then let's get into this. Let's talk the Mesa report. How do you guys want to start this off?
Yeah, so Mark, you tried to expand the series at the end of last week, saying, we need to do a 2.5 or maybe a part 4 so we can dig into the Mesa report. I think we can probably talk about the findings of Mesa 3 at the beginning of this, and then we'll get into, kind of more of the core part 3 sentencing and what her kind of where we're at now with things. So we'll hand it to you to kind of take us through Mesa report 3 and what was found, which again is something that the jury never heard.
Of course, because they weren't allowed to, because these people that are doing this to all of us don't want the citizens to know the truth. They did everything they could to keep this evidence from getting out to the public, because once the public figures out what's going on, it's over. Their entire house of cards is destroyed, because the whole point of their election system is it's an election illusion system. They use that system, they create an illusion that the results are correct, where they're able to covertly manipulate the outcomes of our elections. And as soon as the citizens realize that that's what the system really does, it's over. They're going to dump it in the trash. So for the reports, just so everyone knows how to get to these reports, I'll make sure that I go over it again. You go to handcountroadshow.org. That's another place you can go to get them. Down to get educated, down to Colorado. We'll see if I can get my face. All right, I'll just do that real quick here. And then over to Mesa County reports right there on the screen. So I'll bring myself up again. That's where they're at. You can click on them. 1, 2, and 3 are there. Now report 4 is at mesamadness.com. I haven't got report 4 on here yet, but I will do that. Sorry, Jeff. I'll get that done. So we'll recap reports 1 and 2 real quick. Report 1 showed that the election records that were on the original image that Tina took during the trusted build process that the Secretary of State and Dominion put out, when they did that process, they wiped all those records right off of the machine. All the log files, all the databases, they covered a bunch of tracks. It's the digital equivalent of walking into a crime scene with a bottle of Windex and a rag, and they just wiped all the fingerprints. That's what they did digitally to that server, and report 1 shows it picture by picture. Report 2 shows that Chris Krebs is wrong, and that Jenna Griswold is wrong, and we don't have the gold standard elections. In fact, report 2 shows there are hidden back doors in the voting system created by Dominion that allows someone that knows how to use those tools to manipulate the results in the election, manipulate results, manipulate votes, manipulate candidate names, get into the encryption keys to then make changes to the tabulators. Yeah, the keys to the castle. And that's what report 2 shows, is all that stuff is right there, and it's built in there by Dominion. And then report 3 shows that the funny business that we found in those databases, it shows what that actually was. So, and this is Jeff O'Donnell and Walter Doherty's report, so I'm not taking credit for the report. I'll just go through it with you to explain what I found here. So let me see if I can, well, let's see here. I'm trying. How do you want to do the video? Do you want me to share the screen as well, and you can throw it up there?
Yeah, if you can share the screen,
right,
that would be better.
Let me do that here. I'll get here.
While you're doing that, Mark, have you looked at the Coffee County image at all? No.
Can't say.
Okay. Because they had that backdoor access in Coffee County on the primary runoff night, or excuse me, not primary, on the runoff night.
Well, I can say this. I can say every image I have looked at of Dominions has these backdoors in it.
Yeah. They used it, and they caught them using it.
I would, yeah, I'd love to take a look into that in a little bit more detail. So, report three, we've got, there it is right there. We'll go to the executive summary. And essentially, what the report three is all about is about these extra databases that are in there. So people understand, if you don't know what a database is, it's just like a file cabinet of information. And so it's not odd that there's a database on a voting system. I would expect there to be one. And some people say, oh, it had SQL server on it, or some people call it SQL server. It means the same thing. And they say that's a problem. It's not. Having SQL server
Everyone
on
calls
a
it
voting
SQL
system
Server.
is, yeah, it's not a problem having it on there. And SQL stands for structured query language, in case anyone's wondering. Having a database server on a computer like a voting system is not a problem. It's not out of the ordinary. I would expect that to be. Now, SSMS is different, though. That's SQL Server Management Studio. And that is a separate program that Dominion installed that allows someone to get into the back door of the database server itself, bypassing all the Dominion software and go right into the database. It's like if you had an airport and you've got TSA, you got to walk through TSA to get to the terminal. It's like being able to go through a side door, bypassing TSA and going straight to the terminal. That's essentially what SQL Server Management Studio does. And there's another backdoor utility called SQL CMD that I found on the hard drive. And there's a web server running with direct access also to the database server backend. So there's many ways for someone to get into that database server backend, bypassing the Dominion software on the front end. And how the voting system typically works in this Mesa environment is they've got all the tabulators. These are computers with scanners attached to them, connected to a what they say is a private network with the EMS server also connected to that network. And the EMS server is the server that has the databases. And so the officials put the ballots in the tabulators, and the tabulators feed the ballots through, and it tabulates those votes, and it puts those votes into processing databases. Then, after they're in the processing databases, it takes the votes in the processing databases and adds them to the totals in the totals databases. So these got separate databases, which is weird. I would never have designed it like that. But if someone was going to manipulate an election, they would design it with modular databases so they could just switch the middle databases out really easily without affecting the main database. It's much easier to do that when they're separate like that. And I'm not saying that that was their intent, but I'm saying if someone were to design a system to be able to manipulate elections, so one of them might design the system in a way that had multiple databases that they could easily modularly swap in and out. So what we found when we forensically investigated this system, and actually I'll pull this up so I can show you in real time what this is as well. I'll load it here in the background. And but I'll show you these databases. So what we found is a whole bunch of extra databases. They're called the two processing databases is the adjudicable ballot store and the tabulation store. That's the name of them within the system. Then you have the main database, which is the election database. Well, the adjudicable ballot store and the tabulation store databases, there were lots of those in the system. It was strange how many of them there actually were. I couldn't figure out why would they have so many of those. And what I'll do is I'll pull the system up here and I'll show you a list of all those so you can actually see them with your own eyes. And I'll start that here in a second. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so when we looked at these databases, we tried to figure out why do they exist? Why do all these extra databases? Like for every election, there's all these extra sets of these databases, and it didn't make sense. And we looked at when were these databases created? And we noticed one set of them was created 3 days during the tabulation process. So this is as they're tabulating votes, they're putting the ballots through the machines. 3 days in the middle of that process, this extra set of databases was created. And then we compared the two sets of databases. And that's what this report goes over. And when they compared them, we looked at not only the 2020 general election, but also the 2021 Grand Junction municipal election. And this municipal election here, this is the one that got Tina originally very suspicious about something going on because the entire city council was wiped. The all conservative city council was wiped and replaced with all progressive candidates. And remember, one of those candidates had just moved there 3 months prior. How do you move to a city and in 3 months you win city council? I mean, you have to be an amazing candidate to be able to pull that off, right? And the citizens had no clue who these people were. They had no clue how they won an election. And that's when they contacted Tina, and Tina told them, I'll look into it. We have the ballots here. We can run them through again. If there's a there, I'll find it. And that's a quote what she told me. She told them all. And I've had citizens tell me that's what she said as well. So when Jeff examined these databases, we looked deeper into them. In the 2020 general, this extra set of processing databases that got created, you can see here, there was a digital reloading. They moved 20,346 ballots from the original processing databases to the new processing databases. But 58 batches, as you can see right here, did not have their digital records copied to the new database. So 58 batches were left out of the new set of processing databases. That's bizarre. First of all, why would an extra set of processing databases be created in the first place in the middle of the tabulation process? Second, if a new set was created, why wouldn't have been an identical copy to the original set? And why would there be 58 batches of ballots, which are 5,567 ballots, missing? The other interesting thing about this is Seth Keschel, prior to even us figuring this out, when he was looking at from a different angle altogether, he figured there were about a 5,000 vote discrepancy in Mesa County in the 2020 general election. So he was telling people there's something weird about 5,000 votes ish, weird. Well, we pull these databases up later and see 5,567 vote discrepancy in the digital data that Tina preserved when she got that forensic image prior to the trusted build, which is really the untrusted digital wipe. And that's what we found in there. So interesting that, 5,567, pretty close numbers. Then in the municipal election, the 2021 Grand Junction Municipal, that city council race, found the same exact thing. An extra set of processing databases and 46 batches that didn't exist in the new set that existed in the original set of processing databases. Very bizarre. And then when I was working with Sandy Brown, because after all this happened, we're trying to figure out what's going on in Mesa County. So we're interviewing everyone. I was interviewing, of course, Tina extensively, and Sandy, who was in charge of the elections there, interviewed her and asked her, okay, what happened? And we ended up asking her this: what happened during this election? Do you remember anything weird? Because we knew that these extra processing databases had been created, and we're trying to figure out what triggered this creation. And she said, yeah, there was something weird. She said, so during the process, when we were adjudicating ballots, and if anyone doesn't know what adjudicating ballots means, here's what it is. When the computer has a problem reading a ballot for whatever programmed reason it's told to look at, which are called outstat conditions, it sends it to what's called adjudication. It just sends it to a different folder on the computer, sets it aside, and then when their adjudication staff is sitting in front of the adjudication terminals, which are additional computers plugged into this network, when they command the system to go through adjudication, what it does is it pulls up the ballot images on the screen, indicates where the computer had trouble figuring out what the vote was, interpreting the vote, and then it allows the citizen that's sitting there, or the official that's sitting there, to look at that image and override or specify, tell the computer what the intent of the voter was, to basically correct the inefficiency or error or failure that the computer had in trying to determine what the voter intent was. And so when they were going through and adjudicating these ballots, they would adjudicate one, then they hit done, and they go to the next one, they hit done, go to the next one. Well, as you know, some ballots have write-ins on them. And sometimes people write funny things in the write-in. Sometimes they write Daffy Duck or, some nasty words. And when you see that Daffy Duck, if you see it again, like a couple times over, you might recognize, wow, is that the same ballot? And that's what happened. And what Sandy said is, as they were going through adjudication, the adjudicators, the citizens, were calling her saying, oh, something's weird. We keep seeing the same ballots over and over again. We adjudicate the ballot, we hit done, and then it shows back up later either on our screen or on someone else's screen, but it's the same ballots. They're getting stuck. They're not ever passing out of adjudication. So Sandy realized this was going on. She didn't know what was causing it. So they called Dominion. They called Dominion support, and they were told that Dominion had never heard of this and didn't know why it was happening, but that they would look into it and try to reproduce it in their lab. So they hung up and they waited and waited and waited. An hour goes by, no call from Dominion. They try it again and everything's working. The problem just went away on its own. So then we asked her, when did this occur? And she said, well, it was about 3 days in, which coincided with the date and time that that additional set of processing databases was created. So the problems that she had in adjudication with the ballots getting stuck and them calling Dominion about it all triggered at the same time that when we forensically investigated the system and saw the creation of these databases, they matched. So whatever created them very possibly had something to do with the symptoms that they were seeing with these ballots getting stuck in adjudication. And here's my gut feeling of what happened. My gut feeling is this, and this is how the system, the architecture works. The main database has a field in it that points to the adjudicable ballot store and the tabulation store, which files, the primary database is the processing database. It points to the processing databases. And if you have, let's say, a different set of processing databases, that pointer could be moved to point to this other set instead of the original set. So here's what I think might have happened. I think something triggered it. What triggered it, I don't know. But a new set of processing databases was created. I think the server was pointed at the new set. And I think the adjudication terminals were still looking at the old set. So when they were adjudicating the ballots from the old set and they were moving them in the old set, the new set didn't see the changes. So it kept stuffing them back into the same pile again. I think something like that happened. I think something got out of sync between those old processing databases and the new processing databases. But the answer as to why they had two sets of processing databases, no one's ever come up with. But that's what this report is all about. And it's about the other weird things that were found in these processing databases. So I'm going to scroll down. I want to show you. Yeah.
Before you move on from that, can I just ask you, are you're familiar with the Williamson, Tennessee bug?
Maybe. What is it?
The QR code signature mismatch that put ballots into a hidden provisional folder.
Oh, I am aware of some counties with QR code mismatches.
Yeah,
but that one I hadn't heard of. I'd love to have some details on that because it all might kind of tie together.
Okay, I can fill
Very
you in. I'll send you the EAC report after.
Okay. All right. So let's pull this up. I want to show people this other very important point in this report. And read through the report. It's got all the details. It's got exactly how we found this information, the date and timestamps. Everything you would need, especially if you're an IT professional. If you're an IT professional and you understand what I'm talking about, please go look at this. And I didn't put the images out, but I will say the images are out online. If you search for the Mesa County voting system images, they're out there. Someone did put them out. So if you got them and if you're smart enough to understand what I'm talking about, then you're probably smart enough to know how to mount the images and examine this for yourself. I would, of course, not to do anything nefarious, but I think it's important people look at this to get to the bottom of what happened here because we've never been given an answer to it. So let me show you something in this report. Let me just jump to page 31 here. This is something I saw early on before this report got created. In the cast vote records, which is the list of all the ballots and the choices on all the ballots, as they were put into the system, as the scanner essentially scanned them in with tabulators, this is something we found loaded in the very beginning of the votes in the November 2020 election. And look at this. This is the crazy thing. This all came in on tabulator ID number 10. These are the batch ID numbers, and each batch would have a consecutive number, so that's normal. There's your load order, the order that they were loaded in. Okay, got it. 10/19 of 2020. Okay. But look at the creation time. The creation of each of these batches inside the database, these records of the batch being scanned in. Look at this here. 1207:44. and 12:07:41. That's 4 seconds between those batches. The first batch had 100 ballots in it. The second batch had 42 ballots, and the second batch started 4 seconds after the first batch. That means 100 ballots were ingested into the system in 4 seconds. Now get this. The scanners that they have attached to the tabulators in Mesa County can't even physically scan those ballots that fast. The rollers can't even pull the ballots through the scanners, 100 ballots in 4 seconds. That can't even happen. Not to mention the processing time and tabulation time and all that. 4 seconds is physically impossible. Then you look at all these others. 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. This one was 18 seconds, 4, 4, 4, and 4. Nearly 100 ballots. That's bizarre and unexplainable. And in total, I think it was like 941 ballots that came in there. I'm going to pull up. I might be able to find this here. I want to show you a
real quick, just to make
go ahead.
sure I'm understanding here. You're talking
Yeah.
about just under 1,000 ballots in less than what, a minute and a half is what we're looking at here in the window, or 2 minutes, whatever it may be.
It was like 30 seconds.
And-
Or in total, yeah. And that was
and-
another election. Sorry, it was 30 seconds. But yeah, in just 7:41 to 8:28.
So
What are you talking?
talking
30, 40, 50, 60 seconds?
43 seconds.
yeah, so under a minute, you have
Under a minute.
approaching, we'll just say over 900 ballots. The machine physically can't do that. So
Right.
aside from all the other stuff that you mentioned, the machine itself physically can't do that. Why isn't that something that raises a huge flag to say, hey, if this machine did this tabulator ID 10 did this, well, one, let's look at all the stuff from tabulator ID number 10, but then let's see if this doesn't show a pattern through the other tabulators, because if it does, this is a major issue. How's it happening?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we should be looking into. And that's what should have happened when all of this was found. And I did find it. Fantastic. Okay, let me show you this here.
And this is the cast vote record that we're looking at right now.
Yep.
And this is
on the cast vote record.
And this is
check this out.
provided by the state or by the government.
No, we actually got this from the forensic data on the system itself. Thanks to Tina getting these images, we were able to look inside this. This is looking inside the black box machine that clerks don't know how to look at. This is what's going on behind the scenes.
Has anybody tried to FOIA, or did anybody try or I guess you guys call it Cora out there? Has anybody tried to do a Cora and get the cast vote record from the county and see how they rectify this in the cast vote record?
Not that I know of. Maybe some people did. I don't know if the county even exported this. I don't know. But this is the data. So if they exported the cast vote record from the system, this is exactly what they would end up seeing.
Okay.
Now, is this part of the information that would have got wiped out during these cleaning?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It would have been, yes, this detail would have been wiped out. And maybe some of it might have been backed up in their little Dominion backup software where they back up the election project. But I would like to look at the actual cast vote record files that the election officials looked at versus what was actually in the database. I think that would be really important. Yeah.
Didn't that DU professor guy just go back and edit cast vote records from, I think it was Arapahoe County, for the 2020 election just this summer?
Yeah, back in February.
Yeah.
Apparently this guy Kurawaki, this is according to Arapahoe County, contacted Arapahoe County and said, "Hey guys, your cast vote record from 2020, 5 years ago, is wrong, and you should look into it." And then after all the citizens have been complaining for 5 years and they ignored them, they decided, because Shiro Kurawaki, from an assistant professor from Yale, this nobody that doesn't even live in Colorado, calls them and they're like, "Oh yes, we'll jump right on that." And then they had all their experts look at it and they said, "Oh yes, we did have something wrong in there. The cast vote record was wrong. Here's the new one."
Yeah.
And they put out this new cast vote record
5 years later.
Yeah, 5 years later.
5 years later, they replaced the cast vote record. So any auditability done,
Gone.
absolutely
Wow.
gone. But it's also my
Yeah.
understanding that citizens were speaking before, I think maybe it was the county commissioner board,
Mhm.
just a week or two before that change, and raising concerns about election data specifically. And then this professor comes out. It's like, oh, hey guys, there's a problem here that I just totally found in my academic research. Nothing crazy, but you guys should look at this. And then they changed the cast vote record.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's some very interesting things about Mr. Karawaki as well, and he's got some very interesting connections as well. We don't have time in this show to do all that, but we'll do another one maybe with about Shiro.
All signs
So
point
in
to
this,
Tommy.
yeah, exactly. So here's a cast vote record in an Excel format now, okay? And here's the same batches that we were looking at a second ago. There they are. And Jeff graphed these. And what he did is he graphed the ratio, the Trump to Biden ratio. And that's all we were looking at that time, because remember, this is the very beginning of this. We're trying to make sense of all this. So we don't know exactly what to look at. We're just trying to look at everything. But check this out. This is really important. These batches here, I'm going to zoom in here. I should zoom in not that much. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So those batches right there are these red dots. Each of these dots represents the Trump to Biden ratio of that batch. Okay. Look at the craziness. Okay. We have these batches, and we'll move the graphs. You can see the whole thing here. Oh, let's go this way. Okay. So notice they're all crammed into the same time slot, because remember, they all happen in less than a minute. So they're all right on top of each other. And look at the ratio. Do you know that the average for this was right at the 1.0? The average of those like 941 ballots. Let's see, where are they? Yeah. Well, let's go back over here. It was exactly 50-50. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that just so odd? You have like 940 something ballots that are scanned in faster than the machine can physically scan them. They all show up in less than a minute, and they have an exact 50-50 ratio between Trump and Biden.
But
Isn't that
doesn't
strange?
Professor Halderman say that voting activity is just so random that you can't use tools like this to understand it, Mark?
Yes, silly little peasants, you can't use math to explain this kind of stuff. But here's the crazy thing. The county is a heavy conservative county. The average for the county is like well over 70%. So how does this first 940 something ballots show up with an exactly 50-50 ratio in an impossible amount of time, yet the rest of the county, totally different percentages? And in fact, mail-in ballots had a totally different percentage than the in-person ballots. And then you've got this stuffed in, I call it a preload of ballots in the system. What that preload really does is it increases the size of the denominator in the very beginning of the election in order to create and establish a 50-50 ratio. So as they add additional ballots in, that ratio doesn't change much from the 50-50. I don't know if that they did it on purpose. I don't know what their intent was. All I know is it doesn't fit. It's too odd. It's not natural. It doesn't fit the rest of the pattern. It's an anomaly that I think is very important to focus on. And the fact that those machines could not have physically scanned that paper that fast means there's no way it came in by paper normally. That's a digital insertion. And I doubt that paper exists. I doubt the 941 ballots had exactly a 50-50 ratio. I doubt that those ballots ever existed at that time.
But the risk
So,
limiting audit showed that there's nothing to be concerned about as it pertained to this election in this county, right?
apparently, the risk limiting audit, yes, had no problems. And what they've done, so the public understands, and this is based on everything I've researched, they've designed the audit to avoid finding the manipulations. And if you look at how Colorado designed their risk limiting audit software that they use, and they tout that it's open
Which is the
source, and
pilot
they
for the nation. Colorado's risk limiting
right,
audit is the pilot risk limiting audit for the nation.
I've done a little digging into the risk limiting audit software, and we'll say we may have to do another show on that. Um, there's some very concerning things in their RLA. In fact, I called the Secretary of State to ask him a little bit about the risk limiting audit software and about their random seed that they use. And when I started asking questions, they sent me to their attorney to answer the question. Isn't that weird? I ask a technical question and they send me to an attorney to answer my technical question. And the attorney asks, "Who is this?" And I said, "Well, it's Mark Cook." And he
Dangerous
goes,
election
"Oh,
denier, Mark Cook.
right." He goes, "Oh." I said, "So back to my question." And I asked him the question again. And here's his answer. "Mark, you know. You know."
What?
That was his answer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Do
So
you have the
I
recording?
meant, of course I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's here's my point. And I get the ratios. And even if the dude wants to argue that you can't use math, even though we use math for every other damn thing that we do in human existence, is why not just get one of these tabulators, put it on TV in front of everybody, and have Dominion come in and say, give us 900 ballots in under 60 seconds.
I know
Yeah.
why.
Well,
Yeah.
they'll never let
You know
get
why?
to that. They'll never
Yeah.
let you get to that point, Alpha. All they have to do. We talked last week, or in part 2, last part. We talked about Dallas and how Dallas and Elbert County also took images, and then the Secretary of State seized those images. All they have to do to debunk actually the Mesa reports is do the comparison of the images to each other. Are we seeing the same behavior in Elbert County on the machines that we're seeing in Mesa County? They've never done any of that. They got their hands on those images, and as we discussed last week, nobody knows where they are. I think there's a litigation hold on them, but my money's on they destroyed them.
I get that for the finesse of it, but I mean, make a as a funny, actually this is perfect, make a commercial that's what, 42 seconds with one of these tabulators and show it putting out its stuff, and then show this clip to all of America saying they're telling you that there's no election mishaps, they're telling you that there's nothing to be audited, that this was the safest and most fair and transparent election in American history, but here's their tabulator and here's what it can't do, here's what the record shows it did, and nobody wants to explain, nobody wants to go and look into this. So let me ask you this, how many total tabulators, if you had to estimate, were there just in Mesa County?
I should know how many, but we can look at this list. It's right here. So there's tabulator 10, 4, 10, 4. So there's 2 tabulators so far. And there's
7, 2.
7. I think they had 4.
There's
I think
a
they had
2
4
also,
tabulators.
7 and 2.
7 and 2. Yeah, I think they have 4 tabulators total.
So if you have 4 tabulators and at least one of them has an error, that means a quarter of your machines might have something wrong with them. Pretty fucking significant.
Dude, there's no way we can trust anything coming out of these systems. And the whole point about them getting their hands on these images was to suppress the images from getting out, because they don't want the people to realize their elections are a facade.
Yeah.
Their elections are a joke, an illusion. They've been covertly manipulating these things for decades.
And not for nothing, but this is similar, Brian, you'll remember this, to the Judge Peter Thompson and Carrie Lake's thing. They in that trial, Carrie Lake's team proved that the mail-in signatures, the signatures on the mail-in ballots were being approved faster than humanly possible, right? Can't be done in the time period allotted. It's absolutely, to Alpha's point, someone needs to look at this, because this can't actually have, it's literally impossible for what the state is saying happened to have happened. And it ended up being, well,
There you go. Check it out.
That was Judge Thompson's answer. Well,
there you go. There's the woodpecker. That's the woodpecker in Arizona. And this is real time. This is not sped up. This is how fast he was going through the signatures.
Thompson's ruling was that you had to prove that they did it maliciously. ultimately.
Which is madness.
Insane.
We should not have to prove intent once we've proven that they didn't do the statutory thing, the thing that they're required by statute to do. When that's proven in any other domain of law, there would be an action taking place. But in elections, it's, well,
it wasn't on purpose.
And look, he even was adjudicating these signatures.
And
He
shout
wasn't
out
even
to
looking
Kurt
at
Olson and Brian Blem on that.
100%. And Eric.
Absolutely. Oh, do you know who was right next to him at the courtroom? Don't you?
Ryan Macias.
I was.
No, Mark was there. Yeah,
But remember, Ryan Macias was like down the hall in a room
course.
testifying. That was my joke. You guys.
Yes, Macias, and of course, Perkins Coie. They had their 14 attorneys right behind me.
They sure did.
Listen, these people know exactly what they've been doing. They're just pissed. These annoying little peasants,
we won't let it go.
out.
We were supposed to let this go by now, guys. This was everybody was supposed to have moved on. We were supposed to have let it go, but no. Return the freaking diamonds.
Amen.
We're taking the diamonds back.
Mark, how
overt acts and a treasonous conspiracy.
Is this similar to what they found in Maricopa County when they did the Giuliani hearings and were showing thousands of ballots front loaded in their
very possibly.
Okay.
I haven't been able to look at that data. I would love to be able to forensically examine far more of these so I can see the patterns. The problem is we got one group examine this one, another group examine this one. I've been able to examine some of them. Some I'm not able to talk about, unfortunately. I wish I could have access to all of them because I could draw some great parallels between all these and help explain these patterns to the public that don't fully understand all this stuff. It's not super complicated, but it's outside of people's normal knowledge base, so they think they can't understand it. I can explain it to anyone. It's not complicated stuff. You got dots on paper. The scanner reads the dots. It determines what candidate is what dot. It puts it in the database. It adds the numbers, and then you pull a report. And if someone wants to massage the numbers in that database, they can do it then. They can do it after they pull the report. They can do it when the CVR is generated. There's a million different ways for these systems to be manipulated. But the biggest problem with all these systems is this. They push the citizens away from the election. And the fact that the citizens have now been removed from our election process and replaced with machines, we have no oversight. And because we have no oversight, we have no way to determine if we have a constitutional Republican form of government, which is an Article 4, Section 4 violation of our Constitution. None of these systems are compliant with our Constitution because we can't see it, understand it, or verify it. And if we can't do that, we have no idea if we have a republic.
Yeah, but Brian, didn't Judge Totenberg say that we don't have a right to that? We don't have a right to anything beyond casting a ballot. Your right as a constituent of American elections, as a participant, as the people, your right ends at the casting of a ballot.
Yep. You don't.
Which is absolute bullshit. In case anybody doesn't catch the tone.
If you let's just for the purposes of the conversation, let's just stipulate it and said that they were right, which I know we all completely disagree with. But let's just say that they're right. Your rights end at that point. The sheriff is the highest law enforcement authority in a state, and what you guys are showing me, and I'm looking at this, through the lens of a cop. What you're showing me are felony crimes to defraud the government, defraud the people, theft, conspiracy. You're showing me multiple felonies. So if I'm the sheriff, I'm going to walk my happy ass in there, and I don't care what a judge says or anybody says because I have the constitutional authority to grab that information, secure it in evidence. Patents don't mean shit to me. None of that means shit to me because I'm the highest authority in the state when it comes to an investigation and law enforcement. And then I start doing my investigation.
Or in the county, right? Highest in the county.
Or in the county, yes.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with that. You have to be a constitutional sheriff with a big set of balls or ovaries.
And an election
expert. And an election expert. And there aren't that many of them out there. I mean, God bless Sheriff Darleaf out of Michigan. He's a beast.
And
he's
that's what I was going to say,
absolutely,
Mark. What Alpha
yeah,
is describing of what the sheriff should do is what Sheriff Jarleaf did, right?
absolutely. Every sheriff needs to do this. But here's the problem. Our sheriffs, a lot of them have already been replaced by using this system. People have utilized this system to replace DAs, sheriffs, judges, etc. We're already past that in many places. So we've got sheriffs that aren't even real constitutional sheriffs in these positions, like Carbon County, Montana. There's a perfect example. There was a clerk there, Crystal, who was running for re-election as clerk. She got in there in the middle of the night. She was in there by herself. We have her on video doing this. She goes and grabs a stack of mail-in ballots. She goes into the back room. She comes out of that room sometime later with ballots outside the envelope and walks over to the paper shredder and starts shredding them one after another, shreds hundreds of ballots. Then she goes back into the room again, grabs another stack, and walks over to the paper or to the tabulators. I don't think she confused the paper shredder and the tabulators. They're two different machines. They do different things. One
They
makes a
both
grinding
accept paper.
noise. They do both accept
They
paper. Maybe that's why she got confused.
Can put
So
paper
she
in
won.
both.
She won by 87 votes. So the citizens got the video. Now she thinks she was being smart by blacking out all the video, but she blacked out everything except that little sliver at the very top of the screen where the date and time was. But in that sliver, if you zoom in 650%, you can actually see what she's doing in the background because God put the paper shredder right in that little sliver in the very back of the room. It was a beautiful thing. I have this video. You can actually watch her doing it. So they take this to the sheriff, and the sheriff says, I can't do anything about this. It's election related. You have to go to the attorney general. So they go to the attorney general, and the attorney general looks at it and says, yeah, it looks like she's shredding ballots, but there's nothing I can do about it. You have to go to the sheriff. So the citizens get this. They go to the commissioners. The commissioners called the sheriff and kicked him out of their
The
office.
Spider-Man meme, right?
Who is the most powerful person in a county?
Sheriff.
The sheriff.
You are wrong. Who is the real most powerful person in the county?
Oh, I know this one. The coroner.
No.
The
Okay,
Who runs the
coroner's
election?
The only one that can arrest.
Who
the
runs
sheriff.
the elections?
Oh, the clerk.
The clerk.
Well,
because that
allegedly,
clerk-
and not in Colorado, but sure.
That clerk sitting there in the back room in the middle of the night, shredding ballots by herself. She conducted the election essentially, and she chose who the winners and losers were. So do you really think that the sheriff who's in there because of the clerk, most likely, is going to go after the clerk that keeps him being sheriff? Do you think the commissioners are going to go after the clerk that has the power to decide whether they're commissioner or not?
The only reason
Once
that
you
this
get a bad
level
clerk, you're
the
done.
only reason that this level of oversight what you're talking about can be done, right? That one person can effectively change. The only reason for that is technology. If you had the people counting paper ballots at the precinct level, this could not happen.
Exactly. If the people were involved in the election process, if we reclaimed our elections that belong to us, none of that stuff can happen because we're there watching it. And if we do it at the precinct, even if there were a huge group of corrupt people at one precinct, they're not going to affect a county worth of votes. They're going to affect one precinct worth of votes. So you dilute the risk when you decentralize to the precinct. And when you put it in the hands of the citizens, you don't centralize the ability for a bad actor to manipulate the election. But we got off a little bit. We were talking about, Mesa report.
Yeah,
I think we've gone over the report enough.
This along too, so we need
Yeah,
to
so
get
I
to the end of.
I think we're good on report 3. Jeff did a great job. Jeff and Walter did a great job, on the report. And then report 4, if anyone wants to read it, mesamadness.com. And report 4 was about 2 things. In the executive summary, it's the fact that someone generated a report 6 days before election day. That's very strange. And I can pull this up here as well. Boom, right here. There we go. So right here in the executive summary, 6 days before election day, right there. So that right there is odd. Oh, sorry. And it allowed someone to view them, shared in direct contravention to Colorado Revised Statutes 1.7.5, 107.5. And that foreknowledge could be used to influence the election or manipulate the election. In addition,
Well, certainly you
evidence
can
also
check, right? Hang on a second. You can certainly
Yeah.
can check the early voting totals at that point, right?
Of course, you can check
Yeah.
everything you want, right? So I mean, I think early voting is incredibly dangerous because obviously they're using predictive modeling, using the tracking of the
Yeah, but it
ballots through the
happens, and it
mail-in voting
happens for
system.
at least a couple weeks here in
Of
Colorado. And
course,
so if you're
of
checking
course,
and generating reports 6 days before the election, you're looking ostensibly to see where we're at.
like, and who did that? Who actually pulled this report up, right?
EMS
And then the
admin.
other thing, of course, that horrible, that EMS admin person. And then the evidence also shows that the results of those elections are wildly inconsistent with the typical voting patterns, both nationally and in Mesa County. So the patterns were totally inconsistent with previous voting patterns. And that's important because Report 4 was written prior to what Ed Solomon has now found when he has investigated the cast vote records and found some ways to examine the cast vote records that highlights the manipulation. It's so easy to see the data is fake coming out of it. And it fully complements Jeff O'Donnell's report number 4. And all this is going to be coming out here soon.
Excellent.
So real quick before you get off this, Mark, because I'm so frustrated. I was already frustrated, but I'm really frustrated right now. Am I misunderstanding that it doesn't matter whether we're doing a paper ballot or whether you're checking a box on a machine, whatever the mechanism to count that is the only thing that really matters. And if that's compromised, we're smoked.
Welcome to the party.
This sucks.
Yep.
But the
Now
cool
you
thing
know.
about it, as bad as it is, it's an easy fix. All we have to do is reclaim our elections. All we have to do is run our elections ourselves, voter rolls back to the county, sole custodianship in the county, make it totally transparent, and then the citizens run their own elections. We vote in person on election day in small precincts, decentralized, close to your house. So you don't have to travel far. The votes are counted by us, we the people, right there in the precinct on election night. We get results that night in every single precinct across the entire state and country, and we publish those results ourselves to all of us, to our election officials, to the rest of our citizens. Everyone gets the precinct level results because we are all smart enough to add those precinct level results to get to our county results, add the county results to get to our state results, and we can add the state results to get to the national federal results. It's
And
that easy, but none of us are doing it right now.
Yep.
anything beyond the precinct level, anything reported out of the precinct level is read only. That's it. It's the
Absolutely.
precinct is the master source of truth. Centralization
You got
creates
it.
complexity, and complexity breeds and hides corruption. It has to be decentralized, and it has to be the immutable ledger at the most decentralized. So you can read it, you can submit all the stuff, and everybody can add it, but we don't have a bunch of different results. This is what's going on in El Paso right now. El Paso County for the November 4th, 2025 election. One of the canvassers down there was like, hang on a second. The election night numbers from El Paso County and the Secretary of State's don't match. And in my, I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, I mean, they never match. Like they just,
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'm in Nebraska right now. I just did in Douglas County in Omaha. I did a presentation last night. So just so you know, Nebraska, they've been instructed, every clerk in Nebraska has been instructed by their Secretary of State not to release cast vote records and not even to save cast vote records, not even record cast vote records. Montana also, they've all been told don't release any cast vote records to the citizens. So no one can even get their hands on the cast vote records. And when the citizens, I asked them last night in my presentation, have you guys ever gone to your counties, all your counties, 90 something counties, 91 or 92 counties, got the results from the counties and added them up yourself to see if they matched what your state is telling you the totals are? And they did that, and they were off by 4,000.
Yeah, they
did
never
not
match.
That,
And that's
never
the thing. So this is encouraging to me because everybody in El Paso County is up in arms about this right now. They're really pissed off about it. But,
Good.
we were really pissed off about it in 2020 when we first realized that they don't match. And then in 2022, when they don't match again, they never match. The difference is that people care now. And that's a good thing.
Now they're looking. We weren't looking
they're
before either,
looking
so we
and
never
they're pushing
noticed.
the issue with CDOS, and that's a good thing because this data hygiene problem that we have, which is the nicest way to describe what's going on, CDOS is apparently blaming some sort of software glitch
Oh,
for
it's
it. But
always
it's
a
not a
glitch.
new, but it's not a new software glitch. It's an issue that they've
Right.
known about for a decade that they haven't fixed, and they like the ambiguity. They like having the plausible deniability of, oh, that was just a bad data set, or oh, there was a glitch, or oh, there was this, or oh, there was that. They like having that. It
They
you
do,
know,
and they
takes some of the heat off
purposely
them actually having to be accurate with
Mhm.
U.S.
And they
elections.
even purposely leave people in the elections that make errors. They want error-prone people in there because when people make a lot of mistakes, it clouds everything. And those errors, it allows them to hide manipulation underneath the real error.
Which
The
is
I mean,
beauty-
this
exactly
is
what they said, right, about the databases in the Mesa Report 3 was,
Mhm.
oh, it was a human error. It was, she was sitting at the, she did something when she was sitting
oh, it's
there at
even
the
worse.
computer.
They blamed it on Sandy, okay? And then Sandy, who was totally supporting everything Tina did, I was with Sandy side by side at a conference table when we were looking at these cast vote records. In fact, we were looking at this graph right here, me and Sandy. And when she looked at this data, she had never been able to see it before. She didn't know how to pull it up. She looked at this and saw it, and she started crying. She burst into tears. This is Sandy Brown of Mesa County, burst into tears, head in her hands, when she realized what was going on, and because she felt so embarrassed that she didn't see it happening.
Mm.
And then fast forward a little bit, Sandy Brown turns on Tina and blames Tina for all this. Something caused Sandy to totally change her tune, to once support Tina, be there side by side, trying to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah,
She's pissed that
the
this stuff was
full weight
going
of the
on. She
federal
wanted to
government.
expose it. You got it,
Yeah.
right? They went and threw her in jail. They scared the heck out of her daughter, scared her, and then all of a sudden, magically, Sandy turns. And the
Yeah.
same thing, I'm sure, happened to Gerald Wood, that little. I'm not going to say
Well,
it, but
we're gonna move on from this
okay,
topic in the interest of time. I think that
okay.
Brian, we should shift and talk about, are there specific parts of the closing arguments that you feel would be good to play, or should we just go right to sentencing?
We could probably go right to sentencing. The closing arguments, I'd have to review them again, and I did not review them. So
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is important before we play the sentencing, and Brian, I'll bring it up here. We're going to play it through. We'll pause as we go and talk about what we see in here in the sentencing. But as I've said, I think in each part of this so far, it's important for people to remember that the convicting information, the details, the data, the evidence that got Tina convicted on the 4 felonies that she was convicted of were stipulated details. The trial did not have to take place for the state to prove these details because the details were stipulated by the parties before the trial began. So what we saw, in my opinion, is a show trial. It was a trial to make it appear as though the state proved their case against Tina Peters, whereas what actually happened is that all of the convicting information was stipulated to. They went through kind of a dog and pony show of questioning witnesses and all of these kinds of things. But when the jury was given the case to decide what happened, the guardrails for the jury tied the conviction, like the what constitutes a conviction on each count, tied it directly to the stipulated details. They had no
Just like
wiggle
they
room.
engineer our elections, they
Yeah.
engineered the jury instructions as well in order to produce
Exactly.
the result they wanted.
Yeah, the jury could not, unless you had some Lysander Spooner type of dude sitting on the jury looking for an opportunity to do jury nullification, which will get you arrested, right? Unless that was unless that person was on the jury, there was no way they were not going to convict. And if because of the it's the final thing I'll say, and then we can play it. If we go back to part 1 and the jury would signal messages, right? The state didn't appear to know that existed. That was impeachment evidence that was produced. So they did the Tina Peters defense team didn't have to produce that in advance because it was information they were using to impeach a witness, the witness being Jerry Wood. That got the jury to reasonable doubt on those charges. And Tina was acquitted on the charges pertaining to the identity theft of Jerry Wood. That likely, in my opinion, and nobody knows, right? This is total speculation based on us watching it and everything. If Tina had been able to talk about her intent and present, other information as to the cause for why she did what she did, the manner in which she did what she did, and speaking to her intent and whatnot, she could have potentially gotten to reasonable doubt on the other charges as well. However, the way that the jury instructions, to Mark's point, and the guardrails provided to the jury by the judge, the way that all went down, there was really no other option. And I guarantee you, they did not expect them to get to reasonable doubt on the Jerry Wood stuff. They were pissed off and shocked by it. And it was the most explosive part of the trial. But, when you control every aspect of it, and then you say, oh, well, she was convicted by a jury of her peers, which we're hearing a lot of, right? Since I know Brian and I don't know about you guys, Mark, actually, I'm pretty sure I've seen you out there too. Since we've been talking about this and playing part 1 and part 2, the attacks are coming from all over the place about how Tina had a fair trial and was convicted by a jury of her peers, from people who have read mainstream media headlines about this case, but have absolutely no idea what happened at trial.
Right. Yep.
Insane. You ready for me to bring it up, Brian?
Sure.
Make sure no one's got any blunt objects before you watch this.
All right, here we go.
We're here today for sentencing in Miss Peters' case.
This is sped up 1.25.
Before I get into my comments, I'll enter judgment of conviction consistent with the jury's verdicts as to counts 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. As it relates to fines, fees, and costs, a $2,000 fine will be ordered as to counts 1, 2, 4, 6. As to counts 8, the maximum fine will be imposed. Counts 9 and 10, $1,000 fines will be imposed. You retain the right to ask me to reconsider any sentence I impose under Rule 35B. You have the right to appeal any sentence I impose. If you want to end the judgments of conviction, if you wish to do that, you need to do it within 49 days of today's date. The protection orders will remain in place during the life of this sentence. Conditions 6 and 7 are vacated. However, you can ask your lawyer what that means. If you are ever sentenced or today sentenced to the Department of Corrections, then I'm required to inform you that the time I actually impose or that may be imposed is not the amount of time you are likely to serve. It can be and very likely will be reduced by your accrual of good time and earned time credits within the department, meaning that the better you do in prison, the more programming you take advantage of, the sooner you'll be released. I want to circle back to the request from earlier today in terms of the motion for a new trial based on a Brady violation. To the extent I needed to make findings on that today, I'll note that 1, the motion could have been filed weeks ago. 2, the information generally was known to the defense prior to trial, perhaps not the specifics, but enough to have at least mustered some questioning of witnesses at trial. And 3, that a Brady violation is one that generally almost exclusively involves the withholding of exculpatory evidence that may be used by the defendant in a case. When looking at such a violation, the court looks at that type of evidence through the lens of a defense attorney, not through a prosecutor, such that it's not the prosecutor's job to determine what is or isn't exculpatory. It's the defendant's job to make those decisions. Here, the argument is that back on, I believe, June 25th, Ms. Peters went to the clerk and recorder's not office, but where the ballot box is located, some distance. I don't know if it's 100 feet or not away from the actual physical office. She went there with at least one camera person. It looks like maybe someone else was also there with her. Apparently she was voting. She had some conversations, according to the affidavit that's been drafted for her arrest in that case, with election officials who would be employees of the clerk and recorder's office, which she was not allowed to have conversations with. Her presence was noted by Ms. Vance, one of the witnesses in this case, who alerted law enforcement, who then did the investigation that resulted in everything I just said being uncovered, and ultimately that warrant being drafted. The defense made some requests for that information.
Pause it for a second.
Once through the...
It is my understanding that the person who drafted that, who made that complaint about Tina going to vote at the clerk's office and talking to people, it's my understanding that that is the same person that called Griswold in August of 2021 to have Tina's office raided after she left. That's my understanding. Information and belief may or may not be true, but that's how I understand it.
Police department, it was denied, according to the defendant, because it was an ongoing investigation. The DA said that they didn't have anything, if I'm not mistaken, but that they would turn it over later when they got it. They didn't do so. Looks like the warrant was drafted well after the trial occurred. So it is well settled that for the purposes of discovery, evidence that could be used to impeach a witness, motivations, the like, would fall under a Brady type of requirement to be disclosed. But as I said earlier, there's quite literally nothing that's been provided to me that suggests anything in this arrest warrant, or that what Ms. Bance said, who was an important witness to the prosecution, would be construed objectively or even subjectively through the lens of a defense attorney.
Can you pause real quick, Brian? I wanted to look up something real quick just to make sure I was accurate, because it's been about 6 years now since I wore a badge. But something he said just didn't resonate with me, and I wanted to go look up why. When he said that the prosecution doesn't have a duty to find exculpatory information or evidence, he's dancing a fine gray area. Now, it is correct that a prosecutor doesn't have to find it, but they have to disclose it if it's known. However, and then I was like, and I'm glad I remember this from detective school. They have it. This is the extended duty of the responsibility that a prosecutor has. So think of it as the umbrella. When the case gets to the prosecutor, by that time, your police, your investigators, your detectives, your special agents, we all have our individual reports, and we all have our individual evidence. The prosecutor has the umbrella coverage of responsibility for all of that. It is their duty to know everything that's in our possession. That's not finding it. That's their duty. And the case law that goes with this is Kyles versus Whitley, 1995. Prosecutors have a duty to learn about exculpatory evidence held by others on the prosecution team, which were all considered. And so maybe this judge doesn't remember it or know it, but this is a legal thing that exists. And so when they say, well, they don't have to find it, that's true. But if this information turns out to be information like we learned with Woods, what, or what I forget the name of the investigator.
Cannon,
thank you. When he learns that I didn't get the whole thing, at that point, the prosecution, it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the trial, that prosecutor has a legal obligation, a duty to tell the FBI, I need to know everything that you know with regards to this, because I am responsible for that as an extension of what's going on with Brady. So that is a legal thing that exists here. So the judge is partially right, but he's not sharing the whole story when it comes to exculpatory information there.
Well, I also it seems like you're alluding to the Gerald Wood conversation, and I don't think that's what he's talking about here.
He's not. Yeah, he's talking about it was information. I think information to impeach Brandy Bance when she was on the stand. And I thought what he was saying was that and everything Alpha just said is really important. I thought what he was saying was the rules say you have to look at Brady violations from a position of the defense, because the prosecution doesn't get to determine what's exculpatory. The defense does. But
Alpha's saying they have to disclose it.
Yeah, 100%. Those two things aren't at odds, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, your logic, Alpha, should have been applied to Gerald Wood. All right, here we go.
Favorable or exculpatory to the defendant, particularly where there's video footage of the interaction that occurred between the defendant and the individuals who may have been employees of the clerk and recorder's office. So Ms. Vance's mere reporting of the same to law enforcement is what it is. And certainly in any event, to the extent there was exculpatory value to it, as the case law says, it was incredibly minimal and could not undermine the confidence in the verdict. I'll nevertheless let people respond to it. And
that's the jury is the finder of fact in this case. but he just found a fact.
Right.
Go ahead.
To the extent I might not be divested of jurisdiction to consider it, hold a hearing on the same if I find one is warranted after further briefing. I make that record just to close that loop for the purposes of any appeal issue that might come up in the future. The purposes of sentencing have been alluded to, particularly by the prosecution. I'm not going to repeat them all, but I say generally the same thing. That is, the purposes are statutory, and they include, but are not limited to, promoting the acceptance of responsibility. That doesn't mean that a defendant has to take responsibility. To the contrary, Ms. Peters has exercised her right to a jury trial. She's exercised her right to hold the people to their burden, and such cannot and will not be used by this court as a means by which, or justification by which, to punish her. But rather, the sentence itself is to promote the responsibility acceptance, not to ensure that someone takes responsibility, however, once they've chosen to exercise their right to go to trial. I consider deterrence in sentencing, that is both general and specific, that the sentence I imposed must deter Ms. Peters from engaging in similar conduct in the future, but it also must deter others generally from engaging in this type of conduct.
Make an
I
example.
consider
of it.
rehabilitation where appropriate.
Honest statement.
I consider punishment where
How do you deter an elected official who's no longer going to be an elected official? The deterrence is gone.
Well, I think the point of that statement was, yeah, sure, we're going to try and deter Tina Peters from doing anything again, but what we really want to do is show all the other elected
Yes.
officials what's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's both, the narrow and the broad.
Exactly. It's
And
not
it worked.
It's not to deter Tina. It's to deter other clerks.
And it worked because as I've traveled around the country, I've talked to clerks I try to talk to clerks in every county I go to. And I've been told by multiple clerks, Mark, I have concerns. I know there's problems, but I don't want to be Tina Peters. I have
Yep.
a family. I
Yep.
have kids. I have my husband. I've heard that from people. They are too
Me too.
afraid to be Tina Peters. It's disgusting.
I don't want to be Tina Peters is absolutely something I have heard from people in other states as well, clerks in other states.
Yep.
Yep.
They know there's problems. They're just too afraid. And they did this to Tina in order to instill that fear and silence all these other clerks out there.
It was the point, in my
Yep.
opinion, of
Absolutely.
all
It
of
was,
this
yep.
and all of the theater of it
And
and
to
all of
punish.
the enhanced narratives and, the stolen passwords and leaked passwords and all of these things going back to August of 2021 that were detached from the facts. The purpose of this saga has been exactly what Mark just said. Don't let anybody else get any big ideas of questioning our elections.
And it was also to
Tina
punish
Peters.
Tina. Is to punish her to make her pay for exposing what she exposed. And the process is the punishment. And what they're putting her through right now, even being in solitary confinement, all of this is about punishing her. Even because if it gets adjudicated fairly and people look at the evidence, she's fine. She will absolutely be freed if this is adjudicated fairly. But they are trying to put her through hell right now, and they're trying to kill her right now so she never even makes it to appeal.
appropriate. I also must ensure that the sentences I impose are consistent among offenders similarly situated, but I must also impose a sentence that is designed to meet Ms. Peters' unique needs. Here, the defense has, and Ms. Peters in particular, has remained quite defiant, which is her right, but certainly not helpful for her lot today. And in arguing why I should impose a particular sentence, she tells me about her ailments, her loss, her struggles in life. But in reality, for those of you who may have been here earlier this morning and seen some of the folks who've occupied that chair before Ms. Peters, there could be not much in the way of a comparison in terms of the type of sympathy one would extend to Ms. Peters. Those folks didn't have 4 lawyers representing them. They didn't have a team of assistants helping them. They're not getting rides in private jets all over the country. The people who sit in that chair suffer, generally speaking, immeasurable trauma in life, struggle mightily with alcohol abuse, substance abuse, mental health struggles, family loss.
Oh, it
They come
gets
from
so
broken-
much worse, Alpha.
I can't believe this is being said by a judge.
And keep in mind,
He hadn't even got started yet.
keep in mind, Tina
It gets
Peters.
so much worse.
Wow. Just so people understand, I can't even count how many sentencing hearings in 14 years of law enforcement. This is wild.
Oh, you're
Yep.
about to see Twilight Zone. I can't believe you've never seen this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is going to be, I
And-
can't wait to watch your reaction. This is going to be amazing.
Spoiler alert, when he gets to the end, he's like, I'm at peace with all of my decisions.
you know, Alpha, what he just named right there about Tina or about the other people that he's using as an example, those are all self-inflicted things.
I'm 100% there. They don't have 4 attorneys. Yeah, because they chose a life of crime,
Correct.
crimes that victimize people and created trauma for those people, which puts them in a position where they don't have the income for 4 lawyers or whatever the case may be. Because people aren't going to crowdfund somebody who's out there and chose to be part of a gang that destroys their community. Why was there so much crowdfunding behind Tina? Because people believed in her cause. This wasn't a crime of moral turpitude. It wasn't even a crime to begin with. But even if you go out the way they outlined, to compare her to career criminals is absolute fucking ludicrous.
And for those that might not have seen the first part, Tina Peters is a Gold Star mother. Her son Remington died in service to this country as a Navy SEAL in a freak parachute accident. Correct me if I'm wrong. Her husband also died following all of this.
Well, here's this. I'm telling you, this is I'm pretty pissed.
And didn't hold on one more second. And her dad. I was going to say. So she's lost her son in a training accident in service to this country, her husband while all this was going on, and her father. And he's comparing that to alcoholism, substance abuse, and other things, which, granted, tragic. They're self-inflicted. None of those circumstances that they're talking about with Tina that she's using for compassion are self-inflicted.
She lost her father while she was in jail in Mesa County. She was in jail the night her dad passed.
Those are things you can't correct. That kind of stuff. This is October 2024. This is the Biden's administration when all this is happening. And the reason this pisses me off so much is because this is the upside down world that Obama, I would say, first started, and then Biden definitely accelerated this. But there are things that people do that should be weighed in favor of them. Like, for instance, this is a job where it's public service. She's a servant of the people. That the judge should be weighing that. And what we saw,
wait for it, because he does. He does weigh that, and he does talk about that extensively. I want to also make it really clear that the government's benefit harm theory on a lot of these charges was internet fame. They said that Tina Peters did what she did because she wanted to be internet famous. She wanted to be on the stage at the cyber symposium, and she wanted all these trappings. And you can hear that he has adopted. The Judge Barrett has adopted that as a fact. They did not prove that, by the way. That wasn't something that they had to prove. I mean, it's the benefit harm theory. So in theory, they should have had to prove it, but they didn't. And Tina Peters was prevented from bringing any information about her intent, why she did what she did. So she couldn't dispute their benefit harm theory of why she did what she did, just kind of stood as a found fact. And you can hear him basically citing it here in sentencing. This is another example of she was not allowed to bring her affirmative defenses against what he is saying now.
That's I mean, that is such misconduct on the side of the judge. If he wants to weigh in internet fame as this is the intent of why she did it, he can do that if he allows her to present the argument or defense of why she did it. And then he can determine based off of what he heard, whether he believes her or if he doesn't believe her. But if you're going to completely negate her ability to even launch a defense, you can't then judge her on something, because then what you're saying is, I predetermined this before it ever even started. So she didn't stand a chance when it came to that. But this is what we saw this with the J6ers. We saw this with the parents at the school board meetings. You had parents that were prior military, prior law enforcement, had some type of career choice where they were a first responder or a veteran. And rather than the government say, hey, these people chose paths of service, it was weaponized. And I know because they wrote it in my arrest declaration.
Yep.
Because he is a United States Marine, he's fully capable of inflicting death. Because he was a law enforcement officer, he's capable of exercising violence. What? Since when have we looked at those institutions as places where people become corrupted and evil? No, because if you would have, if if you were to rewind these cases back 15 years, the judges actually reduced people's sentences that came from career choices like that. You know what? This officer made a really bad choice here, and the jury found him guilty. But because he's led a life of the last 10 or 20 years of service, I'm not going to impose the maximum penalty. As a matter of fact, we're going to give him a reduced one because of the life that he chose. And instead, what you're seeing here is people are being penalized for that. It's crazy.
All right, here we go.
In homes,
Let me back it up a little bit.
struggle with alcohol abuse, substance abuse, mental health struggles, family loss. They come from broken homes. The cards they were dealt were never the cards that you were dealt, Ms. Peters. So when I hear you discuss your husband, who sadly passed away recently, your family struggles, and your son, who served our country admirably and made the ultimate sacrifice, I consider it. And I know, too, that he honored his oath to the country, something that is not lost on me when considering the circumstances under which you find yourself. Your age, limited criminal history, and the like are certainly somewhat mitigating. Your ties to the community are what they are, but your reputation at this point is poor because of what you've done here and after. Your lies are well documented, and these convictions are serious. I'm convinced you would do it all over again if you could. You're as defiant as a defendant as this court has ever seen. You don't have those histories of drug and alcohol abuse. There's no lifetime of trauma, not even close to the type of mitigating circumstances I would see from many folks who sit in that chair. No, to the contrary, Ms. Peters, you are a privileged person.
That to your point, Alpha,
She buried her fucking son.
Yeah,
who served this country, and you don't
Privileged.
see that. That's not traumatic. But somebody who wants to hold up a crack pipe, oh, poor fucking them.
that's the inversion. That's the inversion of the Obama era. We have now gone from taking people who do the right thing for most of their lives and have one little hiccup, and we crush them because of their perfect life they've lived up until that point. Meanwhile, we take somebody that's lived a life of self choices, their own choices that were detrimental to the situation that brings them into this courtroom, and we're compassionate over that. That is the inversion of the justice system in this courtroom right now, and it's taking place, like you said, Alpha. It took place across the country for 4 years, and it probably is still taking place.
So why is this so important? Because all the headlines you're seeing of some of these horrific murders across our country, the girl that got stabbed under the armpit on the subway, what did we learn? How many times was he arrested and released? Because of this fucking mindset right here.
Yes.
Yep.
You're seeing in real time a judge speak the words that leads to that kind of shit.
Yes.
Yes.
When Trump says soft on crime, this is what he's talking about.
You are as privileged as they come. And you use that privilege to obtain power, a following, and fame. And to be sure, there's no doubt in my mind that it's exactly what you wanted, and it defies all sense of common sense to believe when you suggest.
She was not allowed to speak about her intent. And there is no doubt in his mind that she did it for internet fame, because that's what the prosecutor said. No witnesses, and there are several witnesses that can testify that she absolutely was not seeking internet fame, that she was in shock and trauma when she got on that stage. There's many witnesses who were not brought to testify at court about that. She was not allowed to speak about her intent. He is stating, there is no doubt in my mind that you did this for fame.
He's a liar.
Ago that you didn't want this attention. No, you crave it, ma'am. And there is no one in this courtroom who would consider that to be anything other than the absolute truth. But to get to the point of what it is that you did here, it's my impression distinctly that you never took your job of clerking particularly seriously. You didn't complete the certification.
Now there's been nothing brought in this entire trial to show evidence that she took her job anything less than seriously.
The certification that he's mentioning was brought up by one of the witnesses.
That doesn't matter. For him to say that, you have to provide evidence of her career. Does she have a history of write-ups, a history of disciplinary action, a history of internal investigations within Mesa County? He doesn't bring any of that stuff up. So how can he make that assessment with no information to support it?
Well, he's about to say, we paused it, but he's about to say you didn't get the certification that all of the clerks are required to get. And that's one data point. I think it's the only one that was presented, though.
One scandal after another followed you in your time as the clerk. And ultimately, it was a belief that the echo chamber in which you live couldn't be wrong, among other things, that led you to do what you did here. This thought process, unfortunately, seems to consume so many in our country, regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, or the like, that what it is we hear and think can't possibly be wrong.
Election deniers. Heed warning.
There are many things in my mind that are crystal clear about this case. You are no hero, you abused your position, and you're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again. In your world, it's all about you. But at bottom, this case was about your corrupt conduct and how no one is above the law. No one in this country has absolute power. Your position as a clerk and recorder, a constitutional position, does not
pause it for a second.
Provide you.
Everybody pay attention to this next bit because it's sort of relevant to right now.
With a means by which to do your own investigation, to not listen to the judiciary, to not listen to the executives higher than you, to not listen to the legislature who sets the law as it may be. This is nonsense. Our system of government can't function when people in government think that somehow, some way, the power they've been given is absolute in all respects. And that's where you fell. You have no respect for the checks and balances.
Right now, we're hearing that Jason Crow, who is a Colorado representative, Alyssa Slotkin, all of those military people that came out and did the don't follow orders if you think that they're unlawful orders. According to Matthew Barrett, all those people should be arrested and thrown in prison for 9 years because our system of government can't function if you do shit like that.
Yep.
Of government, you have no respect for this court, you have no respect for law enforcement, and you do not have respect for your fellow colleagues when you were a clerk and recorder who weren't lockstep in your beliefs. Indeed, just weeks before trial, you were apparently doing what I mentioned earlier, that is over at the clerk and recorder's office where you're not supposed to be, violating the protection order by speaking to employees of that entity with your camera crew in tow. You have no qualms with violating the court's orders because you're innocent, because you didn't do anything wrong. You were just doing your job. You have no problem trying to kick an officer. Your explanation about what happened is preposterous. It's on video. You have no problem lying to officers. It's happened multiple times. They're recorded conversations. It's just more lies. No objective person believes them. No, at the end of the day, you cared about the jets, the podcast, and the people fawning over you. You abdicated your position as a servant to the Constitution, and you chose you over all else. Yes, you are a charlatan, and you cannot help but lie as easy it is for you to breathe. You betrayed your oath for no one other than you. And this is what makes Miss Peters such a danger to our community. It's the position she held that has provided her the pulpit from which she can preach these lies. The undermining of our democratic process, the undermining of the belief and confidence in our election systems. It's not about questioning it. No one says you can't question, you can't ask. It's completely different. And if you don't understand that distinction, then there's nothing I can say or do here today that will change your mind.
I mean, we started this podcast off going over the Mesa 3 report. And so if you're going to sit up there and opine that, you know, she lied and that, you know, there is a way to question it, but it's not in a court to defend 9 years of your life being taken away from you. Don't sit up there and say the things he's saying about her and take the presumption that she did lie, because you never allowed these facts to be presented in his court.
Or in any court. And that's the key.
And not only,
he says it's snake oil that has been debunked and proven to be snake oil time and time again. No, it hasn't.
Never.
No,
correct.
actually the evidence of election fraud has been prevented from being shown in court of law, including in your court of law, Matthew Barrett, because you prevented her from
again.
talking about any bit of this.
100%.
He's
But
just
then
putting
draws
words in
people-
people's mouth.
He draws conclusory statements about the truth of the matter when he did not allow the exploration of those facts in his courtroom in front of the jury, but he is using his conclusion about the evidence of election fraud, despite the fact that he did not see those facts, he did not have them presented. He's using that as a reason to give her the sentence that he gives her. To me, this is, you know, it's cruel and unusual, and it I think will be found as such eventually.
Yeah, it's not just 9 years of her life either. It's literally a death sentence. At 70 years old, that is a death sentence.
Yes, correct.
So the damage that is caused and continue to be caused is just as bad, if not worse, than the physical violence that this court sees on an all too regular basis. And it's particularly damaging when those words come from someone who holds a position of influence like you.
Real quick, is his position an elected position, Barrett?
The judge?
It might be appointed. I'll look it up real quick while you're playing.
We vote for our judges out here, but this.
Well, yeah, it's at different levels you vote for them, and at some levels they're appointed. And I don't know how Colorado's judicial system works.
Appointed by Polis.
Okay, appointed by Polis makes sense.
Yeah.
Every effort to undermine the integrity of our elections and public's trust in our institutions has been made by you. You've done it from that lectern the voting public provided you with. Everything you've done has been done to retain control, influence. The damage is immeasurable. And every time it gets refuted, every time it's shown to be false, just another tale is weaved.
What times are those?
Right.
So I'll begin by saying I've considered all of those purposes of staying of an execution of a sentence. I've mentioned all of them here generally in my comments already, and I find that a stay of any sentence I impose would be wholly unwarranted. All cases have a possibility of reversal on appeal, no doubt. I'm at peace with all of the decisions I've made here. If anything, I gave you and your counsel far too much leeway at times, but the rulings I made came after much consideration, incredible amounts of internal debate, and I trust in accordance with the applicable law.
Internal debate with the prosecution, probably.
I consider the sentence here, in this case, what are available to me. Probation. Community corrections wasn't requested, but it wouldn't be an option in any event, and an incarcerative sentence to the Department of Corrections. Probation's focus is rehabilitation. That is for folks who have minimal criminal histories, low LSI scores like you, Ms. Peters, but where punishment isn't really on the table. It's about putting someone back in the community who's not a risk and giving them a chance to correct those things that brought them before me in the first place. Community
Pause it
corrections,
real quick.
again,
Yeah.
Remember what he said, why she's so dangerous is because the position that she held as an elected clerk gives her a platform and a sense of credibility to say things that he finds offensive. That is why she's so dangerous. That is why he's about to impose the sentence that he's about to impose, because of what she might say.
Well, the only real quick, Alpha, the only thing that he could be alluding to that would actually be logical is if she were going to be returning to her position as the clerk. Outside of that, you're right. It's a First Amendment issue, and he cannot infringe on that in any way.
Yeah.
And so when he says you're a danger to the community and all that, no, she's not. She has no arrest record, no violent criminal history, nothing. She had essentially lying to the Secretary of State,
Three people, one lie.
Exactly. And what he's saying here makes absolutely no sense. Go ahead, Alpha.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And one of the reasons is we would arrest a gang member and he would be on probation when we arrest him, in some cases on parole. They're out of jail before I'm even done writing the new report on the new crime they committed. So now you're thinking, well, damn, now they're definitely going to go back because they were on probation and parole. And then they go through the process again, and guess what happens to them? Because it's a running joke in law enforcement. They get double probation. They just put them on probation again. So please explain to me how that happens if the judge's mindset is one that's authentic and honest. It's not. It's bullshit. This is punishment. He is trying to just punish her. He is trying to beat the fight out of her, and that's what he's doing, because these are the last words she's going to hear before she's walked off to a cell. So he's the momentum of destruction in her own mentality is what he's creating right now, and he knows that. And the reason I understand that is because I have asked some prosecutors, why was the judge saying such kind words to this gang dude that he's sending to the jail? And it's like, oh, they're trying to set him up for the rehabilitation process. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case here. He's trying to destroy her.
Yes.
I mean, the stuff he's saying about her, can you imagine someone saying, yeah, I know your husband died. Yeah, I know your son served the country and he died and he was honorable.
But you're not a crackhead.
But that doesn't matter enough for me.
Right.
It's actually worse than that. I think when he was talking about her son and his oath and his honorable service, he was basically saying, because of, this is my interpretation of what he was saying. I'm not quoting him. But my interpretation was that he was basically saying, your son served our country honorably, and he would, because of that, we need to throw the book at you because you didn't. That's how I heard him talking about her son.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly what he said. Yeah. He resents her son. He resents her. And his job, he thinks, is to punish her and break her and destroy her. Because the danger she poses is the citizens realizing that these systems are all bullshit.
The danger that she
the risk.
poses is that she's going to say that. She's going to say that, and people might believe her, and we can't let that happen. So we need to keep her locked up because of what she might say.
Well,
That is that she should be released immediately.
And it's meant to be a message for everybody else. It's like, don't confuse that part. What he's saying right now is not spoken directly to and exclusively to Tina. It's to everybody else.
Isn't available, but nevertheless, I'll mention is another option that I could still order. It's much more stringent than probation, but it's not prison. And it's for folks who have even higher needs. Again, drug addicts, alcohol abusers, and the like.
Diversion.
And prison is for those folks where we send people who are a danger to all of us. Whether it be by the pen or the sword or the word of the mouth. Prison is where folks go, where punishment is what we're focused on, because the crime committed is so significant that anything less would unduly mitigate the seriousness of the same. I mentioned before, there are no mental health concerns. There's no good reason why you're here, Ms. Peters, other than these are all the active decisions that you made that cost our county significantly, but also more importantly, cost you greatly. Mr. Wood, all the members of the county who worked and trusted you when you asked them to do things that they did on your behalf. It's part of your lies. The expense, the toll is immeasurable. So putting you on probation when you have zero needs that would be met by probation is the very definition of unduly depreciating the significance of what it is that you've done here. The harm that you've caused our community and continue to cause. Community corrections is the same. So prison is the only place that duly meets the purposes of sentencing in this matter. And therefore the sentence and judgment of the court is as follows. As to counts 1 and 4, the judgment and sentence of the court is 3.5 years in the Department of Corrections. Those sentences will be concurrent to each other. As to count 2, the judgment and sentence of the court is 3.5 years consecutive to counts 1 and 4. As it relates to the misdemeanor charges, count 8 is 120 days in the Mesa County Detention Facility, concurrent to count 9 and 10, which will be 6 months in the Mesa County Detention Facility, consecutive to the prison sentence. The reason those sentences are consecutive is because those sentences are, as the prosecution stated, directly related to what it is that you did here in our community, the damage you caused this community, the breach of your oath to the electorate in Mesa County. Your sentence will be followed by 3 years of parole. You have 2 days of pre-sentence confinement credit. Anything I missed? Anything else we need to address?
Judge, I think you missed the sentencing on count 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Count 6 is criminal impersonation. That's also consecutive. That's 15 months to the Department of Corrections.
And
So it's 8.5 years total, plus the 6 months for a total of 9 years of incarceration.
For telling 3 lies.
One lie to 3 people.
One lie to 3 people.
Yeah.
No criminal record, no violent history. Sacrificial son, right? That gave his life, Gold Star mother. It's absolutely insane. The argument the judge is making up there is as if all the other crimes that she was accused of, she was convicted of. When you listen to him, it's just absolutely insane.
It does seem like he was speaking not to the record at trial, but to the public, the court of public opinion. He was considering all of the things in the court of public opinion in his sentencing, whereas he had very strict guardrails about what the jury was able to see and hear And a lot of what he mentions there and refers to as to why she's so dangerous and why things are, so important for her to be in prison for 9 years. Those were things that were in the court of public opinion, not in the record at trial, which I think, provides support for her appeal. So just to round that out, she has a number of actions happening right now. There is the appeal of her conviction, which is in Colorado courts. She filed, prior to that being heard, a motion for bond pending appeal. That was denied, and it was denied citing a lot of what we just heard from Matthew Barrett about the level of danger that she provides to the community. Her and her team have taken that decision to the federal courts, so District of Colorado Court, where they're hearing the Tina Peters' team is asking for federal intervention to overturn her motion for the denial of her motion for bond pending appeal to get her out. They brought 5 different claims to that court. The court threw out all but one, which is the First Amendment appeal, the First Amendment grounds, meaning they're keeping her locked up because of what she might say. The trial court said that. The appellate court said that. That's wholly unconstitutional, and that is what is being heard by the federal court now. I think she's got a solid chance of that being decided in her favor, but we're still waiting on that. And then the appeal proper will be in Colorado courts. No idea as to when that's going to happen. Big part of this problem is that it takes so long to make it through the courts, right? And we're talking, as Mark said, it's a death sentence for an older lady with health issues already, who now, apparently, according to reporting on her socials today, is, as we said at the beginning of this, she's, potentially in solitary confinement. They're still trying to break her.
They are punishing her right now because of the amount of people that have been getting this information and calling to check on her, calling to report these incidences, whether it be to Colorado Department of Corrections, the OIG, Pam Bondi's office, and they're filling the results of people making those phone calls, and they are punishing her for that. Just to put in perspective, when he said why he sentenced her the way he sentenced her and her danger, I wanted to see how much time, just because it's a hot topic right now, Jeffrey Epstein got on his first arrest. And the charges of that were felony solicitation of prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution. This is back in 2008. Jeffrey Epstein was sentenced to 18 months and only served 13 months for that. But you know what? People would make the argument, yeah, but that was in Colorado. So I said, well, then let's look at some recent crimes in Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
Dangerous.
Look up the number of pedophiles that have been let go, because pedophiles were hurt people too.
Yep.
Well, Perry Sean Lones, Lohnes, was sentenced to 11 years. So he got 2 more years than Tina. What was his crime? Armed robbery with a firearm during a crime of violence. Only got 2 more years than
Tina took a backup.
Yeah. That's not what
Tina
that's
backed
not.
up election
No.
records.
Well, hold on.
Tina misrepresented who was in her office to the Secretary of State. That is the crime.
Yes.
That is the crime.
Yes, that is the crime she was convicted on.
The 4 felonies is Tina misrepresented who was in her office to 2 staffers from the Secretary of State and 1 staffer from the Mesa County IT department. That is the crime for 9 years.
Well, let's take a look.
So dangerous.
Let's take a look at something from last month's sentencing. This comes 3 Colorado men sentenced for punching and robbing a postal carrier. 3 men who jumped a postal service employee while he sat in her delivery truck during her lunch break in the rural park 2 years ago have now been in prison. October 1st, Elijah Woods received a 27-month term. He was 21 years old at the time of the incident. Draval Ross, 27 years old, the getaway driver, gets sentenced to 3 months in federal prison, which is weird because usually it's over a year. Marquise Taylor, also 27, was sentenced last year to 46 months. Literally beat someone up, robbed them. It was a female victim. And you could add all their sentences together, and they don't add up to what they gave Tina.
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
But it's just...
Well, that's the cruel and unusual thing. It is unconstitutional to do this. They can't actually do this according to our laws and our standards of justice, our standards of due process. But in Colorado, they do whatever the fuck they want, and usually get away with it. I'd just like to remind everybody that at the time that Matthew Barrett was reading that sentencing to Tina Peters, Jenna Griswold had all of the BIOS passwords up on her website, open to anybody who wanted to get. Then she investigated herself. Everybody decided it was fine, and we just moved on. Also,
Yeah,
around
remember that was
same,
releasing a BIOS password was a felony, right?
yeah, and around that same time, just so folks know, she had a campaign finance violation, Jenna Griswold, and she's gonna run for governor. Had a conversation with the AG, Phil Weiser, who is running for governor, and that campaign finance violation was, dismissed. No reasonable prosecutor would go after that. But also, she was no longer running for governor. She was running for AG now, and Phil Weiser, who dismissed that complaint, is running for governor. I'm sure that's a coincidence. And it's all on the up and up. And the most corrupt people on the planet aren't doing corrupt stuff this time.
Let's play this, Alpha, just to show, the inequality in the application of justice, or even in the investigation in seeking justice. And Ash, you want to set this up? I know you know who this guy is, because he's
Kyle Clark, and he's a massive tool.
Right.
I actually had the opportunity to talk to him for over the course of a week during Mike Lindell's Eric Coomer trial, because we were both there covering it, and he had the gall to say, I'm not setting this up at all, by the way, I'm just ranting. He had the gall to say to me, "What did you expect would happen if you show up packing to minorities' homes?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, that didn't happen at all. It sounds like you were reading your own headlines. Do you really not understand what happened in this case?" And he didn't, because he doesn't write his own news, apparently.
He's an idiot.
And just, to set it up, Secretary of State Griswold had the BIOS passwords up on the website in a hidden folder for 6 months, active passwords.
No. The spreadsheet was right up out there in the open. And then the passwords themselves were in a hidden tab inside the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
There you go, hidden tab. But again,
not secured in any way, just
right,
hidden.
exactly.
Not at all.
They're not behind a password. They're not behind limited access or anything like that. But that's part of the point when you look at the ability to access the machines, like Mark has shown here, and Mark can blow your mind on how they can access these machines. Putting the BIOS passwords out there could very well be deliberate. Somebody knew exactly where to go to look for them in order to gain access to them. It is
plausible deniability.
And they were up for during two election events, the primary and the general. Early voting for the general, because it was October, I think 24th or 25th when they finally took them down. But from the primary to the general election, those passwords were exposed on the website. And by exposed, I mean there was no security measure preventing anybody from going and finding them. And two election events means there's people in and out voting, touching machines, all sorts of things. And they covered it up and lied to the clerks and lied to the people. And when they got caught, nothing happened to them.
And that's the key right there, is that she lied to the clerks. She conspired to lie to the clerks about this. And
to be fair, Jenna didn't do shit because she's a retard. She has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, but
Chris Beal,
she runs
Matt
that
Crane, Andrew Klein, although I don't think he was there yet, but he's the sweeper they brought in to clean up the mess after they got rid of Beal. Those guys are the ones that did all of this. Jenna Griswold is a literal puppet.
All right.
Doesn't
Colorado
excuse her.
Revised
She's going with the
Statutes,
statutory authority.
1-13.5-1101 makes it a class 5 felony, punishable by 1 to 3 years in prison with fines up to $100,000 to knowingly access, tamper, or interfere with voting systems without authorization. This includes using leaked passwords to gain entry, as physical and multi-factor safeguards alone aren't enough. This is basically a law that they put in to make sure that anyone that were to release a BIOS password would result in a class 5 felony. Jenna Griswold puts out not only, first of all, the passwords that got,
or something like that.
Yeah, the passwords that got out in Mesa County, those were old passwords. Those were the previous passwords that were all replaced as part of the trusted build. And only part of those passwords, like half of them were redacted, so they were unusable anyway. And those that got out, which was not Tina that put them out, and without Tina's knowledge, they got out, but they were the old passwords. So even had they got out and they were in full, not redacted, they would have done zero good to anyone because all those passwords were now changed to different passwords as part of the trusted build that happened at the exact same time.
Yep.
And then Griswold, her idiot staff puts out the BIOS passwords, not just for one county, but for all but one county in the entire state of Colorado. And they're out there for what? 2 election cycles out in the open, available to anyone. And then she tried to hide it from everyone. After she found out that they were out there, they tried to cover it up and lie to all the clerks about it.
Did you see, Mark, when we did part 1, I played the clip, and how, guys, by the way, how does Mark know this? He was the expert witness that testified about the passwords in Tina Peters' trial. And I played the clip, and I emphasized the clip where they asked you, or the prosecutor asked you, Rubenstein, were there any passwords in this video? And you said there were 0 passwords. And he says, well, you must have gotten a different video than what we got.
Yeah.
And that just,
and there were no passwords in that video they sent me. None. They had the wrong video.
And there was no other video.
Let's play this here.
Right.
Secretary Griswold told me today that she had not decided whether to tell you, the public, about that password leak before she got called out on it publicly today. I asked Secretary Griswold whether she takes responsibility for this election security breach in the same way that she has held others accountable. And we discussed a string of errors by her office that can damage voter confidence.
To be very clear, we do not see this as a full security threat to the state. This is not a security threat.
You do frequent media interviews warning of the insider threats to elections. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security defines an insider threat as somebody who uses authorized access wittingly or unwittingly to do harm. Did the actions of your office pose an insider threat to elections?
No.
In 2020,
Mark, what kind of access could you get with BIOS passwords?
With BIOS password, you basically have full access to the entire system. You can enable. Here's the biggest problem: you can enable those wireless cards. And remember that all this voting system equipment were ordered with wireless cards. And we brought that to the attention of Colorado. We brought it to the attention of the Secretary of State. I sat there and testified to the right of Tina. With Tina, me and Tina were down there in Denver testifying, saying you must remove all these wireless cards, these modems from the voting equipment. And we were told by the Secretary of State's office, it's not a problem. We don't use them. And we turn them all off. And then we secure them with the BIOS password. So they're all secured with the BIOS password. Then this idiot on the right side of the screen, I had to let you know which one I'm talking about because there's 2 there. But the idiot on the right side of the screen, her office goes and puts all the BIOS passwords out for the whole freaking state on these machines that are all being used for these elections. And in fact, when we found out about it, they were in the middle of the 2024 general election during tabulation, using these systems to tabulate that federal election while the BIOS passwords had all been released. So what she should have done at that moment and said, oh my gosh, we screwed up. We have to stop using all the machines. We're going to have to go back to hand count across the whole board. We can't trust any of these because the security of our entire state has been breached. But she didn't do that.
She's never going to say that. But what they should have said is, oh my God, we need to tell the clerks because the clerks have the equipment. The clerks have the access points with, if somebody has these passwords, if somebody has gone out and gotten them, the place where the damage can be done is at the county level where the machines are with these passwords. So, oh my gosh, we need to tell the clerks. You know what they did? They hid it from the clerks. And I don't, is that Josh Zeigelbaum cut in this video?
I don't know, but if you want to pull it up, just
I'll look and see if I can find it.
But just so you guys know, that is 600 and I think it's 611 counts of exactly what they convicted Tina Peters of, lying to an elected official.
Yep. And they didn't tell the clerks. So if the clerks got caught, oh, sorry.
No, good.
I'm sorry. So if the clerks got caught for something happening in their election system, they would have rolled on the clerks.
Yep.
This literally would have been the responsibility of the clerks, and that lying dirtbag, again, the one on the right, she put all these clerks at risk. by keeping this information from them.
It's a
These
great-
clerks could have gone to prison. We know clerks can go to prison.
Yep.
Look what she did to all of them. It's disgusting.
Great point. All right, here we go.
Passwords leaked. Your office said, quote, the public disclosure of the BIOS passwords for one or more components of Mesa County's voting system alone constitutes a serious breach of voting system security protocols. By that standard, did your office commit a serious breach of voting system security protocols?
Well, to push back on you, Kyle, that sentence is in the press release, but there is a much bigger press release. And part of that investigation in Mesa County was 2 sets of passwords, unauthorized access, stolen passwords, and it was in a different time. Since 2021 and what happened in Mesa County, our security has improved, including the 24/7-hour cameras, including the badge and access. The law has been significantly strengthened since then. We have multiple layers in place to ensure situations like Mesa County don't occur, and that is not what is occurring here.
This is not the first time that your office has made mistakes that have damaged voters' confidence in our elections. In 2022, your office sent out mailers to 30,000 non-citizens inviting them to register to vote. They, of course, are not eligible to register to vote. That same year, your office used Colorado's ballot tracking system to send messages to specific Coloradans encouraging them to vote when, in fact, they had already voted, causing confusion that had to be cleaned up by the county clerks. And now this leak of the voting system passwords.
Ooh,
Given
pause
your
it.
office's repeated
Yeah, didn't that come up in your trial?
The reason for that they sent accidentally sent voter registration postcards encouraging people to register to vote, to be precise. The reason that they accidentally sent that to 30,000 minus 3, because 3 of the people were actually citizens, but the rest were not citizens. The reason that happened is a data coding mismatch between the DMV database and the ERIC system in Colorado.
Oops. We're
Allegedly.
too dumb to use our computer systems. So we
2
make
elections in a
boo-boos
row.
like that.
Two
Double
elections in a
oops.
row.
Why are those things even in the same system where they could be cross, pollinated?
Well,
You just answered
because
your own question.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, the reason is that the ERIC system can't tell you if somebody's not a citizen. So you need to validate all of the information that you get from ERIC, and you need to cross-reference that with all of the systems in your own state. And so what they've done is they've written, the code to be able to do that, but they fucked it up somehow because sent a bunch of postcards to people that shouldn't have gotten them. And it was like, whoops, mistakes were made. We figured it out.
All right, here we go.
errors that have damaged confidence in our elections, which you say is paramount, will you resign?
No.
Absolutely not, Kyle. And I just want to, you're unfairly characterizing and leaving out some crucial information.
What's wrong with your face,
We
Jenna?
came out immediately and said a postcard had been sent out to people who are ineligible. The postcard clearly stated that someone had to be a U.S. citizen. No one tried to register from that group of people. We were actively tracking it. And it became a situation where no one registered. And to push back even further, Kyle, Colorado is tied for #1 in confidence in the country in our elections.
According
We
to
have stood
corrupt
up
people.
situations time and time again to protect the right of Coloradans, going over and beyond what anybody would ask of civil servants in this office.
All right, so that one does not.
Her face was malfunctioning because the lies were stacking up. And that's why the eye, the mouth, everything was a total disaster there. She's being crushed by the truth is what's happening, and she doesn't know how to deal with it, and it's only going to get worse. Is she up to like 400 pounds now? Also, by now, I'm sure she is. She's been ballooning up pretty nicely. That stress eating will get
Her
to you.
face was malfunctioning. I love that. That's delightful. Pull up my screen, Alpha.
All right, give me 1 second. Switch
Please.
back over here.
Okay, so this is what actually happened with the BIOS passwords.
It's really hard not answering media questions the way I actually want to.
Okay, I will tell you, all I can do is be as transparent as I possibly can. We were not going to tell counties because we could not tell counties without it becoming the media storm it has become.
Oh my. So that is a recorded conversation between Adams County Clerk Josh Seigelbaum and former Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Perry Beal. That is who told me about the data coding mismatch thing at my trial, because I had him under oath and cross-examined him on the stand. It's a lot of fun. Actually, folks should read it. It was a great exchange. He's no longer there, Christopher Perry Beale. He went back to being a lawyer. He's working at DU, I believe, and maybe doing some private practice stuff. But the person that replaced him as Deputy Secretary of State is a man named Andrew Klein, who's
Where's he from?
Perkins Coie guy.
He's a Perkins Coie attorney that
And
wait,
before that,
you're
he
saying
was
that
like
the
Clinton campaign, Biden campaign, Obama. He's one of those guys.
Wait, how could the state of Colorado accidentally hire an attorney that worked coincidentally at Perkins Coie to now run elections in the state of Colorado? That's weird.
Yeah, it was like around February or March, I believe, that he was swapped out. They didn't tell anybody. They didn't announce it. In fact, Becky, who's
It went cause a media frenzy. That's why.
Badlander, noticed on one of the press releases that it was listing a different Deputy Secretary of State. She said it to me. She's like, I thought Chris Beale was the Deputy Secretary of State. We're all like, huh. No announcement, no press release, no anything. Just a very kind of quiet swap out of the Deputy Secretary of State with the Perkins Coie guy.
You literally have an audio statement where he's talking about the intent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell the clerks.
We are living in this.
We couldn't tell the clerks without it becoming the media storm that it has come. Also, we cannot deal with this problem from a technology standpoint without telling the clerks, because the clerks have the machines and the passwords are in the wild. But media storm.
Can you imagine a group of detectives and their question, hey, why didn't you go arrest that judge who tried to murder someone? Wow. Would have created a big media storm.
And compare that with what we just listened to Judge Barrett saying about Tina, about her being too much of a media storm.
Well, the crazy part is at a minimum, you would be fired, but you would immediately start being investigated. You're talking because that is a conspiracy. If two or more people come together to conspire to do something, and I don't know what the specific, election law there would be that they violated, but I'm sure there's one if they're not disclosing information that's, it's just
well, don't worry. She's running for attorney general now.
I was about to say,
she's going to be the law.
Upwards.
And she'll
be the law. She'll take care of all this.
Because
she's
she'll
running to
prosecute
be the
herself
law,
right away.
and she runs her own election to be the law.
Well, because if they control the elections, they could just do whatever the hell they want.
Bingo. And that's why they don't want the citizens to have control of their elections.
Exactly.
They're criminals. It's a whole criminal empire.
For people that are wondering, and I hate to say it, but I know it's true. People will hear stories like this and they'll be amazed by it. They'll be upset by it, but they won't do anything actionable because the reality in their individual life is there's no immediate felt consequence of it. In short, a lot of people just call it selfishness, but there's a mindset to it. But I want to remind people, these types of things don't stop here.
No,
remember
just the beginning.
Remember, if you live in a state where your elections are compromised to the point where they get to pick the DAs, they get to pick the judges, they get to pick the sheriffs, then you have to sit back for a second and be like, how long before they're no longer inclusive of your ideologies?
Yep.
And how long
in Colorado about 8 years ago.
And then how long before those ideologies land you in their court? That's how these things these things will have an effect on you. And what happens is if you don't stop it at one state, it's like a virus. It will bleed into the next state and into the next state until they control this.
We're there.
This country coast. I agree with you, Mark. Until we're there, coast to coast. I mean, I think why can't people realize that we're out of time when it comes to this? I mean, think about it. Trump's first year is already coming to an end. We're going to be setting up for midterms pretty soon.
Yep. That's what I said at GART. That was my point at GART, is that, it is time to start pushing to the point where if we don't have wild election reform, we lose this country. It's gone. It's gone. And I'm not.
How long do we have?
Maybe a year. I think.
No. How long do we have left in the show?
Oh.
I'll stay on here for a year. You guys are great.
Here's what I'll tell you guys, and then I'll get your guys' closing thoughts on this. And we probably will have to do more shows. I thought I had a pretty good understanding of what all this looked like. And in these 3 parts, my mind is blown. And I know we're only scratching the surface of what all you guys have worked on, which that just makes me even more concerned to know that just 3 episodes has already really crushed my spirits when it comes to this. And I know that there's so much more. And I hope that the audience realizes that this is not for entertainment. This is a warning. That's what this is. And like Ash said, this stuff's already in play in many parts of the country, and it's only deepening its roots and extending its elements of control if we don't do something with this information. And I would really like to do another show with you guys where we can really, and I know your website, if I remember, handcountroadshow.org, articulates a lot of this stuff. But for those of us that don't read anything that's not pictures, I would like to bring you guys back on to do another show that really maps out the different things people can do. And just to let you guys know my intentions, I want it to be something for the American citizen that doesn't really have a lot of time on their hands. I mean, I would say we should all drop it and make the time, but the reality is there's going to be people that have very little time to invest. So I want it to be something that addresses how they can participate. People that do have the time, maybe they're retired, maybe they own their own business or they're part-time, what people like that can do. And then ultimately people that are full-fledged gun holes saying, I'm willing to drop everything to do what I need to do. I would like to address those 3 factions of Americans, and the sooner the better, and something that gives them the ability regardless of what states they're in. And if you guys can come up with a plan to execute that, I would appreciate it. But with that, you guys, I'll let you guys share your final thoughts and let people know where they can find your work.
Well, I'll go first. That's a great idea. Me and Ash talked about this a few weeks ago about putting together inclusive series like this, and it is something that we need to do. Ash and I have been hammering on this for 4 years, 5 years. We've been on Why We Vote podcast. It's probably the only, I can't think of a more consistent podcast specifically on elections and election integrity over on Badlands Media.
There isn't one.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's been as diligent on this as me and Ash have been in terms of getting the message out. And that's not to take away credit. There's a ton of people working behind the scenes on this. A lot of the people in our network are working, closely with the administration and getting a lot of this resolved. I pray that it gets resolved. And, like Alpha was saying, this isn't entertainment. This is a warning. And if we don't heed this warning and we don't get active ourselves and get active in demanding at the local level that we go back to the way that it used to be, where we all have a vested interest in our community and at the precinct level of rectifying this, we're doomed. We are doomed because these 100%. People have been sucking at the teat of the federal government and their state governments for far too long, and they know that they are untouchable. What we just saw with Jenna Griswold, 611 felonies, at minimum, and nothing. She knows nothing's going to happen because there's no accountability for them because they have put the right people in the places that they need to be through manufactured and stolen elections. And it's the most important topic in this country, bar none. There's not another topic in this country that is more important than that outside of perhaps the exploitation of children.
Yeah, that's well said. And we're not going to stop because it is the Republic at stake. It is the nation at stake. And, we can't allow free and fair elections to become a myth or something that's not worth pursuing. Elections are how we confer consent in our society. And if they are stealing them, manipulating them, then they're fabricating our consent. And then we're slaves. So we're going to continue. Alpha, I want to thank you for doing the series. It's been great. We've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. I will be doing a marathon day. I'm going to aim for the weekend after Thanksgiving, but it might be the weekend after that, just depending on my ability to get it done. to do all three parts. And I think Mark will be in the chat for some of it. Sean Smith will be in the chat for some of it, and others. Maybe we'll get Jeff O'Donnell and others who participated in the reports and whatnot to be in and answer questions from folks. But stay tuned to my socials for that. I'll definitely let people know when that's happening. You can find all of my stuff at linktree.com/Ash in America, Ash with an E. Actually just updated it. So kind of like sorted it, made it easier to consume. But yeah, thanks Alpha for doing this, and thank you Mark for everything, and I guess thanks Brian.
You bet. And I'm happy to. I'm honored. Thank you guys for the platform. I appreciate it. I stay behind the scenes on all this stuff, so I don't really have much presence online or in social media. So I appreciate every opportunity in being able to spread my message to a wider audience. I do, and I'll ask you this. I got a 9-minute, 40-second video I would love to play. It's the Declaration of Independence from Election Manipulation. Can I play that to close us out?
Absolutely. Would love to see that. You bring it up.
All right,
and
I'm gonna share my screen here. This is something I wrote many months ago after trying to figure out how we fix this problem, and I was so sick of it, and I wanted to save our country, and I realized we need this Declaration of Independence from all of this crap that we've got. So I'm gonna queue up my screen here. Here we go. Hopefully we'll get some audio as well. Entire screen, boom, audio.
And everybody hit the like button wherever you're watching. Smash the like.
Smash it. All right, so we'll give you this here, and should be ready to go. Let me know when to hit play. All right, give me 1 second, folks. Remember, when this show is over, you're gonna go back to doing whatever it is that you were doing, hanging out with your kids, hugging your cousin or your husband, maybe hugging your cousin too. But you're gonna go back to living a life. Maybe go to the grocery store, maybe go to the mall, maybe go to a barbecue. You're gonna do something that you enjoy. There's a woman who is sitting in a jail cell, and in the update is in a solitary confinement jail cell. She doesn't get to touch anyone that she loves. She doesn't get to feel affection. She is rotting away, and they're torturing her. Let that be your motivation to be like, I need to do something. Even if you don't know what the answer is, follow these 3 people and you will get those answers. At a minimum, keep her in your prayers tonight. And with that, Mark, go ahead and hit play, and I'll go full screen with this. You got it. God bless Tina Peters. Here we go. My fellow Americans, I would like to read you the following document written by Mark Cook at handcountroadshow.org, titled The American Citizens Declaration of Independence from Election Manipulation. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for a free people to cast off the pervasive and insidious manipulation that corrupt their process. Hey, real quick, Mark, if you can pause that. I'm getting really low volume through it, and I want people to enjoy. You want to play it? You play it. So handcountroadshow.org. All right, give me 1 second. So let me pull that off because I want people to actually be able to enjoy this. I appreciate it. I don't know why the volume's so low on that. Okay, let me go to hand. And anyone else can follow along too. Roadshow.org. Get educated, and then you'll see American Citizens Declaration of Independence right there. I think second item from the top. All right. Pick that left one, the old guy. Get educated. It gives me a drop-down menu, and second option down. The American Citizens Declaration. You got it. Right there. And there's the video. Go full screen. Let me test my volume real quick. Yeah, perfection. All right, let me bring this up. All right, perfecto. All right, we'll do this again. We'll start from the beginning because I want people to be able to capture it. So again, you guys pray for Tina Peters, and here we go.
My fellow Americans, I would like to read you the following document written by Mark Cook of handcountroadshow.org, titled The American Citizen Declaration of Independence from Election Manipulation. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for a free people to cast off the pervasive and insidious manipulations that corrupt their electoral process and to reclaim their unalienable right to a government chosen by their true, untainted will, a decent respect for the judgment of mankind compels them to declare the causes which impel this severance and the reforms necessary to secure their liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all citizens are endowed by their Creator with the right to choose their representatives through elections that are free, fair, simple, transparent, and verifiable by every citizen, regardless of education or means. That the consent of the governed, expressed through the sacred act of voting, is the sole legitimate source of governmental authority. That when any system, technology, or cabal, whether domestic or foreign, subverts this consent through fraud, coercion, complexity, or obfuscation, it is the right and duty of the people to reject such tyranny and institute reforms rooted in clarity, accessibility, and public oversight. The integrity of elections, conducted with hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots under the watchful eyes of citizens, is the cornerstone of a free republic, and no machine, bureaucracy, or unaccountable actor should stand between the people and their voice. The history of recent electoral practices in these United States reveals a relentless pattern of abuses, all designed to erode the sanctity of the vote and usurp the will of the people. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. The suppression of eligible voters through purges of registration rolls, intimidation at polling places, miscommunication of voting times and locations, and barriers targeting minorities and the vulnerable calculated to silence their voices. The creation of fraudulent identities, registration of deceased or fictitious voters, and exploitation of lax verification to inject phantom ballots, diluting the will of legitimate citizens. The manipulation of ballots through stuffing, harvesting, discarding, or altering votes, whether physical or digital, often concealed by broken chains of custody or fabricated emergencies. The tampering with electronic voting systems through hacking, malware, backdoors, or counterfeit equipment, rendering machines untrustworthy and vulnerable to undetected fraud. The coercion and bribery of voters, poll workers, and officials, exploiting desperation or greed, while complicit law enforcement and judges shield perpetrators from accountability. The misreporting of results through delayed tallies, falsified records, sabotaged audits, and redefined verification processes to obscure discrepancies. The infiltration by domestic and foreign bad actors engaging in manipulation and cyber attacks on voter databases and systems, compromising the sovereignty of our democratic process. The use of dark money, illegal funding, and fake organizations to tilt campaigns, siphon resources, and mislead citizens from genuine reform efforts. The deployment of disinformation, psychological operations, deepfakes, and media manipulation to confuse, demoralize, or mislead voters, sowing division and distrust. The insider threats from corrupt officials, infiltrated grassroots organizations, and manipulated legal processes, including lawfare, gerrymandering, and court stacking, to entrench power against the people's will. The systemic exploitation of legal ambiguities, weak oversight, centralized control, and unaccountable technologies, creating fertile ground for fraud under the guise of efficiency. The reliance on complex electronic voting machines, which obscure the counting process, lack transparency, and expose elections to manipulation, distancing citizens from direct oversight. The centralization of voter registration and election management, removing local control and empowering unaccountable entities to dictate outcomes. The denial of public access to election records, such as cast vote records and chain of custody documentation, under pretext of proprietary concerns, exorbitant fees, or misinterpretations of retention periods. The failure to safely limit absentee voting, which, without rigorous scrutiny, invites fraud through unverifiable ballots that cannot guarantee secrecy or integrity. In every stage of these oppressions, we have sought redress through petitions, lawsuits, public forums, and tireless advocacy, only to be met with denial, delay, or accusations of undermining democracy. We have proposed reforms to restore trust, such as returning voter registration to county control, limiting absentee ballots, conducting elections on a single day in small precincts, and counting hand-marked paper ballots under public scrutiny. We have demonstrated, through efforts like those of citizens advocating for hand-counted elections, that simple, transparent methods are not only feasible, but essential to reclaiming our electoral process. Yet those in power have dismissed our pleas, obstructed transparency, and clung to systems that obscure the people's will. A system that permits such abuses, that entrusts the vote to opaque machines and unaccountable bureaucracies, is unfit to serve a free nation. We have not been silent in our resolve. We have educated our fellow citizens through work groups, demonstrations, and public audits, exposing scandals like corrupted cast vote records and manipulated voter rolls. We have called for elections to be conducted in small precincts of no more than 2,500 citizens, with paper ballots dropped into translucent containers, counted by hand under high-definition video, and verified by bipartisan citizens. We have urged counties to reclaim sole custody of voter registration, verified in person with witnessed signatures, and to publish read-only voter lists in a universal format for public cross-referencing. We have advocated for limiting absentee ballots to those with proven need, scrutinized rigorously to prevent fraud, and for designating a single national voting day to eliminate staggered manipulation. Yet these efforts have been met with resistance, bureaucratic inertia, or accusations of mistrust, leaving us no choice but to declare our independence from this corrupted system. We, therefore, the citizens of the United States of America, in solemn assembly, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the people, solemnly publish and declare that we are, and of right ought to be, free from the tyranny of election manipulation. That we reject complex, untrustworthy machines and centralized systems that obscure our will. That we demand elections conducted as follows: voter registration under the sole custody of counties, with eligibility verified in person every 2 to 4 years, using paper registration cards with witnessed signatures, stored by precinct, and published as read-only lists in a universal format for public cross-referencing, with a national unique voter number to ensure integrity. Limited absentee ballots restricted to those with proven need, subjected to extreme scrutiny, identified distinctly for military and non-military voters, and potentially verified with digital ballot choice hashes to enhance integrity without compromising secrecy. One-day voting on a national holiday with standardized start and end times across the country, conducted in small precincts of no more than 500 citizens using hand-marked paper ballots dropped into translucent, locked containers under continuous video surveillance. Hand-counted ballots, tabulated where cast by bipartisan citizens and witnesses using state-approved methods, with results posted immediately outside precincts and all records, ballot images, tally sheets, chain of custody documents, and videos, published on county websites for public verification by all. Public auditing, accessible to all citizens, including students in grades 6 to 12 as a civics exercise, who may retabulate ballots, compare results, and report discrepancies through standardized county forms, with advanced students analyzing statistics for inorganic patterns, all celebrated as acts of democratic engagement. We are absolved from acquiescence to processes that betray our consent, and we assert our power to reform our elections, restore local control, ensure exhaustive public access to all records, and establish ironclad safeguards against fraud, coercion, and interference. For the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. It is now up to you to share this everywhere. If enough watch it, we can create this necessary change. It may not happen without you. Share, share, share. Thank you, and God bless you. Let's do this.